Hey, welcome back to another Civ 6 guide video. And today, if you know me, this is a video that has been long overdue. I love tier lists, so we are finally doing the Civ 6 leader tier list. So, quick things to acknowledge before we get into it. This is going to be based off of single player deity and immortal, like the higher difficulties. This is not considering multiplayer. I do play multiplayer. I have a fun time doing it, but I'm not like a competitive, filthy robot style player. Those are the lobbies that I have experience in, so I cannot really say to what civs are the best in that environment. We are talking about single player and single player higher difficulties. So please keep that in mind. Second of all, one thing I should say right off the bat, I'm not a player that values culture very highly. I do value it in the early game and things like that, but as far as culture victories and culture civs, that is not my play style, so I don't have the most experience with that. So civs that are really strong in culture victories, I'm probably going to be underrating overall, so please keep that in mind. I think playstyle is something in tier list that doesn't really come up that absolutely should, because it absolutely informs everyone's opinions on these things. So other than that, I'm trying to be as objective as possible, but again, I have to draw on my own experiences for the most part here. Without further ado, let's get right into it. So, quick on how I'm doing the tiers. So of course, at the top we have God tier. These are the civs that have abilities that are consistently strong in all situations. These are the civs that are going to be able to take a bad start or bad land and turn it into a winning game. The best of the best, the strongest of the strong. If you're someone that plays random leaders every time, if you get one of these civs, it should be an absolute treat. These are the best. Next, we have Great tier, abilities that are strong in most situations, but not all. These are your civs that, again, are pretty well-rounded for the most part, very good, but might have one fatal flaw, or their abilities don't fully gel together, or they're lacking one specific thing, like they're bad in one specific scenario. But other than that, these are also fantastic civs. Next up, we have Situationally Great. These are civs that if you put them in the right situation, they are disgusting and like super good. But if they're not in that specific situation, or if they don't have a lot of setup time, they're just okay. Next, we have the Wild card, and this tier is gonna have the most variance. These are civs where their abilities are strong in some situations, just helpful in other situations, and completely underpowered and useless in other situations. These are civs similar to Situationally Great, that in some situations are insane and very, very good, and in some situations are just garbage and you get no value out of them. So they really have the highest variance and can kind of go either way depending on the game. So this is probably going to be the most controversial tier. Next, we have Solid tier, abilities that are consistently helpful but can still be outclassed by others. These aren't bad civs, but they're just not the best. There's a lot of civs that do things better than them, but you can still have good games in them, especially if you get a good start with solid civs. You're going to have a good game. And finally, we have the Needs a Buff tier. I am someone that firmly believes Civ 6 is a pretty balanced game overall, and there's not bad civs. There are civs that are certainly less strong than others, but I don't think this is a game where there are clearly... I don't think this is a Civ 5 situation where there's a couple civs you just shouldn't play outright. I think every civ is at least solid, but the civs in the Needs a Buff are just constantly outclassed by other civs, and just need some kind of buff, some kind of boost to their abilities to make them worth playing. So that's what we got. That's what I'm basing the tiers off of. Without further ado, let's get right into it. We're going to go in alphabetical order or in the list of the civs here. We are starting off with Abraham Lincoln, who I have in Situationally Great. Abraham Lincoln, he has industrial zones give you +3 loyalty, and plantations give you -2 loyalty. That's just fine. Plantations giving you -2 isn't really going to come up ever unless you're doing like a true start location. He gets the big thing about Abraham is he gets a free melee unit after constructing industrial zones and their buildings, which is insane. And it doesn't cost any resources. And gets +5 combat strength. So that's Abraham Lincoln's big thing. And then, of course, he has America's abilities, being all diplomatic slots get turned into wildcard slots, which is very nice. And +1 diplomatic favor for every wildcard slot in the government. That's fine. You don't really need that, but hey, you could always sell extra diplomatic favor. It's never a bad thing to have. The P-51 Mustang is not great. Not that the unit itself is that bad, but it's just fighters in general you just don't really use ever. unless you're in a very competitive multiplayer lobby in which fighters are actually pretty decent. But again, this list is not considering that. And then of course you have the film studio, which is also pretty okay. It gives you a ton of tourism. So all that in mind, again, I have him in situationally great. The thing about Abraham that you can very much argue for him to be in great or even god tier is the industrial zone giving you that melee unit. You can really time things out if you want to and just go straight to musketmen, go straight to man-at-arms, start pumping out industrial zone buildings and just have a ridiculous army very quickly. And he gets really scary because that +5 combat strength, you combo that with the oligarchy bonus, a great general, and it starts to really get out of hand really quickly. And as the time of this recording, I'm not sure if they fixed the bug with him where like his units were just kind of out of control. I believe it's been addressed, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Feel free to correct me. So this ability alone makes him just a domination powerhouse. Again, you could just tech straight to man-at-arms or musketmen or whatever unit you want to go for, and just absolutely go nuts. Yes, melee units aren't the best in the game because they're pretty slow, but if you can get them to the commando promotion, I think is what it's called, to give them +1 movement, that really helps. And of course, battering rams, I think, are incredibly underrated in this game. Battering rams are so good because of how prevalent walls are on deity. Abraham's great. Again, in the right situation, when you can get his military going, he's nuts. Again, very, very, very good domination civ. There are going to be situations where you're playing him and the enemy just rushes you and you're not even close to your industrial zones and you're just playing a base civ with no abilities because all of his abilities are pretty mid to late game is the problem. So I have him situationally great because you need to get him set up. But if you can get him set up, he is very, very good. Next up, we have Alexander the Great, who I have in wildcard tier. Let's go through his abilities real quick. Cities do not incur war weariness. This is incredibly nice. I'll get to that in a second. All military units completely heal when this unit captures a city with a world wonder. On deity, that's very good. When capturing a city that's not a free city, basically, when you conquer cities that have certain districts, you get Eurekas and inspirations, which is very nice, again, especially on deity. Then he's got his 2 unique war units, and I have no idea how to say his unique building. But basically with Alexander, he is a super, super war civ, which is why I have him in wildcard tier. The thing with war civs in this game, if you're not like the best insane, it is incredibly risky. In every civ game, war is incredibly risky, especially early war, and he gets 2 unique versions of the earliest units you can get, being a swordsman and a horseman. So if you can get good resources next to you, if you can start spamming out your stuff, if you have a neighbor especially that doesn't put up walls, Alexander is insane. You just completely snowball the game. You take over a city with a wonder, and boom, you just completely reset, and you can just keep taking cities, keep fighting civs. The war weariness means you don't have to worry about amenity penalties, so you could just keep warring people over and over again, which is normally the biggest problem against war, is that you start getting amenity penalties, sorry. And yeah, he's just an insane civ if he can get going. The problem is a lot of the times you can't get going. You start researching his unique units and things, and then you get rushed and you don't have time, and now you're on the defense, and now you can't recover. Or you put all this effort, you have all these encampments down, you have your units, and then they spam out walls, you're fighting them, and then boom, they put out a man-at-arms, and that just walls out your war, and there's nothing you can do. There's a lot of situations where if you just won't be able to get going, especially on deity, and that's rough, or the cities you're conquering don't have the best districts, they don't have any wonders, so you don't get to use, like, his ability is luck-based, which is always scary. But, again, his unique units are very, very good, especially the swordsman is very nice. That additional support bonus is huge on deity to make up for the combat bonus they get against you. And the heteroids, if they don't put up walls, that thing is insane. But most deity IIs put up walls against you, especially when you start pumping out military units. But if you can get lucky and you get a neighbor that likes you and trusts you, you could absolutely abuse them, and Alexander is great. So there's a lot of games where he's going to be really good, and there's going to be a lot of games where he's super underwhelming, and you get to the medieval era, and he has no bonuses anymore, and you're just playing a base civ. So that's the thing with Alexander. He can kind of go either way. So I have him in wild card, not just because of his high highs, but because of his low lows. Next up, we have Amanitore, who I also have in the wild card tier. This might be a little bit of a hot take. I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fans of Nubia. They don't think she's very good. But I've been absolutely destroyed by the AI more than enough times to know that if you get the right setup with her, she's insane. The plus 20% and plus 40% district boost is huge. That is so nice, especially if you combo that with Liang and bump that up to 60. You can start really pumping out districts, and especially on Deity, your district placements and having a lot of districts matters a ton. And then she gets an extra boost to putting out range units, which is amazing in the early game. Her unique archer is very, very good. Again, amazing on defense. Even though this isn't Civ 5 and range units aren't the best on offense anymore, just having that extra boost of defense, you don't have to worry about the AI warring you. You can fight for yourself is incredibly nice, especially on Deity. And the Nubian Pyramids, while not the best improvement in the game by any means, they are nice, especially if you are getting the desert starts that Nubia should be getting. Having that extra food and that extra faith early is pretty nice. A lot, again, you're probably noticing I'm using the word nice a lot with Nubia. Not the strongest civ in the world, but there's some specific scenarios where if you get a good desert start and you get Lady of the Reeds and the Marshes, you can have some insane cities with just like tons of food, tons of production. You know, you go desert folklore, you get work ethic. Like, there are specific games with Nubia that are nuts. But again, you're not always going to get those bonuses. And even in games where you do have a desert start, sometimes it's too slow to get going to what you need to go, or to where you need to go. Plus, the mines ability is nice. Not a huge deal, but it does help. But overall, Amanitore or Nubia, very solid civ. I think they're pretty underrated, but they're not the best by any means. So that's why I have them in the wildcard tier. Next up, we have... I have no idea how to pronounce this man's name, and I never will. So we're just going to call them the Gauls. And oh boy, do we have our first Civ in Great tier. They have some pretty nutty abilities. Your civilization gains culture to 20% of the cost of non-civilian unit trained. That's very nice. It just continuously goes throughout the game. A lot of times you don't really notice it, but you're just kind of getting these small boosts, and it really adds up. Melee, anti-cav, and range units give +2 combat strength to every adjacent unit. That is very nice when you combo that with their unique unit, which is a warrior replacement. Yes, warrior replacements are annoying because it's harder. It's more production in the early game. But these units are pretty strong. They get +10 combat strength when fighting units that are higher base combat strength, which is going to be pretty much all the time on Deity. So you just get a free unit that's way better than it should be. And when you stack them up next to each other, they're basically like swordsmen at that point, which is really nice. But the main thing the Gauls are known for, of course, is the Oppidum, I think is how you pronounce that. Industrial zones, especially unique industrial zones, are amazing in Civ 6. Production is absolutely king. So having one that you could build in half the time is amazing. You get it early, amazing. And you, as the Gaul, you want to be building mines and quarries all over the place, so you're usually going to have some pretty high district adjacency with them. The one downside to the Gauls that's keeping them from God tier, in my opinion, is the fact that you can't put your districts. You have to change how you do your districting because of all the weird spacing that goes along with them. That can get pretty annoying, especially on subsequent playthroughs. And another negative to the Gauls is that obviously because of their extra culture for mines and culture bombs and things like that, you're going to want to be spamming out mines. But if you spam out mines, your cities don't grow. So you can get to a point where you have like 4 or 5 cities and you're like, oh my God, look at all this production. Look at all this culture. How am I doing so bad? And then you look and you only have 4 population or whatever it is. So you really need to be wary of your city management when you're playing the Gauls, especially when it comes to food and when it comes to districts. But overall, very good production, very good culture, especially early game. Very strong. They're a great civ to just get you going and then keep rolling throughout the game with all of their bonuses that just continue to go. So the Gauls, great tier, or a great civ overall. Next up, we have Trieu, I think is how you pronounce that, Vietnam, who I also have in the great tier. Vietnam is wonderful. They have some kind of wacky zany abilities, but they're very, very nice. So +5 combat strength for units in rainforest, marsh, and woods, and +1 movement at the beginning of their turn there. So amazing on defense is what that translates to. If they try to declare war on you, of course, Vietnam is going to be spawning in woods, marsh, and rainforest. If, you know, the deity AI, as we know, loves to declare war on you immediately. So just having like just free defense all the time with Vietnam is fantastic, especially that extra movement, get those support bonuses. But on top of that, all land special districts can only be built on rainforest, marsh, and woods, like we talked about with the Gaul. That's super annoying, but again, you get used to it, even though it's kind of annoying. But to make up for that, your districts get +1 culture on woods, +1 science on rainforest, +1 production on marsh. Very, very nice. Again, that just continues to scale. Of course, you're going to be spamming out districts in this game, so any bonuses to spamming districts is a plus. And they have elephant crossbows. So what more could you want? There's a bunch of element units in this game, and we love a good elephant. And their crossbows are really nice. Super, super nice. The extra sight is fantastic. Again, Vietnam on defense is a nightmare. If they spawn next to you and you're playing Alexander or like a war civ, good luck, because they're just fantastic on defense. And then on top of that, they also get unique encampments, which is just insane. That also give you culture and tourism. I'm not sure how good the tourism is in the context of a culture victory, because I've never played Vietnam going for culture. But again, they're just a very, very solid civ. They reward you for doing everything you were going to do in general. And they also are just a very strong war civ. So you get some early bonuses. Your yields are way higher than they normally are. Either you get declared war on, or you declare war on someone else, and then you just go from there. They're really, really nice, really fun, great soundtrack. What more could you want? Next up, we have Basil II, who is going to be, probably as no surprise to anyone, is going to be our first god tier civ of the list. Byzantines are insane. They're absolutely insane. So good old Basil here. Heavy and light cavalry units do full damage to cities following the same religion. Gain the Tagma unique unit when defined right. The cavalry thing is so nice if your neighbors aren't putting up walls. This is the Civ 6 DDI we're talking about, so a lot of the times they do put up walls, but sometimes they're really dumb and they don't. So in those situations, Basil is ridiculous, but that's not even close to what makes him good. The main ability is the Byzantine ability, which is you get +3 combat strength or religious combat strength for each holy city converted to Byzantine's religion. Not only that, but you also get great profit points just from putting down holy sites. So what that means, on top of that, you also spread your religion by killing enemy units. So Byzantine is ridiculous because you start spreading your religion. First of all, you immediately pick Crusade. With Crusade, they are just so gross, but even without Crusade, you start spreading your religion to everyone around you. Just keep stacking this bonus, keep stacking this bonus. You just go straight to Tagmas, which are their unique unit. Also, the Droman is really good too. You just get a free quadrant that has +10 combat strength. Good luck if anyone's on the coast near you. Usually you don't get coastal Byzantine, but on the games that you do, very nice. But the Tagma is the main thing here. You spread your religion a bunch to get this +3/+3/+3 combat strength all the time. You pump your Tagmas out that get +4 combat strength within land units. So you just bring like 1 swordsman or 1 man at arms, surround it in Tagmas, and you just it's so gross. Like it's upsetting how good this civ is. Basically, you pump these Tagmas out, and by the time they get rolling, your combat strength is like 80 compared to everyone else when they're at like 40 or 50. It's so disgusting. It's so gross. They're the most broken war civ in the game. Again, I don't play multiplayer, but I've watched other people play multiplayer. And when someone rolls Byzantine, they will forfeit the game before they even get declared war on. I've seen people just move their Tagmas up to someone's border, and the game just ends because they're like, look, there's nothing we can do about this. Four movement units that do full damage to your walls at ridiculous combat strengths. This isn't even considering great generals and things like that. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And on top of that, they get a free entertainment complex that gives them Tagmas for free, which is just, it's so stupid. This is the definition of a civ where all of your abilities come together and they synergize perfectly. Nerf Byzantine, man. Nerf Byzantine. Like if they were +1 combat strength for every converted city, that would be broken. But +3, This is so stupid. It's ridiculous. They're god tier, and there's truly no argument against it. Byzantines are insane. Next up, we have Black Queen, France, who I have in great tier, surprisingly. I think a lot of people really overlook Black Queen Catherine. She's just really solid. So let's go over why. She has one level of diplomatic visibility greater than normal with every civ, receives this free spy with the castless technology, which is pretty early, and all spies start with a free promotion. Just this ability alone, just Catherine's ability, makes her in great tier, I'm going to be honest. Just that. Because having +1 diplomatic visibility over people means you constantly have a +3 combat strength on them, which isn't a ton, but it makes up for the deity deficit, or almost completely, which on its own is so nice on the higher difficulties. But on top of that, you get a free spy at castles, which is pretty early, and then boom, you stack that up to +6, which just makes you stronger than your opponents. She's a very, very, very underrated war civ. Then on top of that, the spy you get starts with free promotion. Normally, when you get a spy, a lot of times what you're going to be doing is sending it over to an enemy land, siphoning funds to level it up, and then you can do the fun stuff, like steal a great work or steal a tech boost or whatever. But she gets just to do that from the get-go, and she gets them earlier than everyone else, which is crazy. Spies are incredibly underutilized in Civ in general, and she uses them so well. So that plus the combat strength is just incredibly nice. Then on top of that, the Grand Imperial, if you can get there, is a super strong unit. +10 combat strength on your own capital is nuts. So doing a Grand or a Guard Imperial push is like a legit strat, especially when you combine that with the diplomatic visibility and you're attacking at +16, and then sure, let's throw a religion on there and you do a crusade. Now you're attacking with +26. That's gross. That's gross. I know we just talked about the Byzantines, but France is fantastic. Grand Tour is just okay. Getting +20 production towards specific wonders is nice. But the best wonders in the game typically are your like first wonders, so you are missing out on a good bonus to the wonders you'd rather have. But 100% tourism from your wonders is very, very nice. Again, very solid culture ability. And then the chateaus are very good, but they are not the best unique improvement in the game. But again, the tourism is really nice. Early golds or early culture, especially +2 culture, is very nice. So I think she's amazing just based off her ability, but all of France's abilities added on top of that, I think makes a great, very, very well-rounded civ. Next up, we have Magnificence Catherine, who I just have in solid tier. You may say, how is there such a big drop-off? They're the same civ, but you replace the insane diplomatic visibility and the free promotion spy with improved luxuries adjacent to the square bonuses, receive +2 culture, may indicate court festival project. The court festival is very nice, don't get me wrong, but man, that is a super downgrade in abilities. And that takes France from being like a very well-rounded, very strong civ overall to being a very niche culture civ. And even then, there are a lot better culture civs in the game. I have Magnificence Catherine as just solid. I think you can still have good games with her, especially if you have a culture victory in mind, and you have the right land for it, and you can get Eiffel Tower and things like that. She'll be fine, but overall, honestly, you can make a case for her being in needs buff, if I'm being honest. But I think she's still solid enough to put her in solid tier. Next up, we have Chandragupta, who I have in the wild card tier. And I'm going to put him kind of in the middle of these two. So he can declare a war of territorial expansion after gaining military training. When he does, he gets +2 movement, +5 combat strength for the 10 turns. That's really nice. The problem is, when do you get to do that? It's not a lot. It's not a lot. And a lot of the times, being able to declare a war of territorial expansion is completely out of your control. So you're going to have a lot of games as Chandragupta where you just don't get a leader ability, which really sucks. And then that's wild card if I've ever heard of it. But India's ability overall is very slept on, which is receives a follower belief bonuses in a city where the religion has at least one follower. They also get amenities and religious pressure from trade routes. That's all fine. The follower belief from one follower is incredibly good. It's so slept on. I don't get why people don't talk about this, especially with the higher difficulty AI. We all know, what do they love to do more than anything? Spread their religion everywhere. So no matter what, if you're playing on the higher difficulties, you're gonna get every AI giving you their religion, especially if you're playing Pangea or something like that, or even continents, they'll do it. So Chandragupta just gets every freaking good ability in the game on his holy sites. And this goes for Gandhi too, of course, but you put a holy site down and now you have feed the world, work ethic, choral music, you know, all of that stuff. You get every ability, which is so nice. And as we all know, religion is incredibly strong in Civ 6. So getting extra bonuses to your monumentality games is really, really good. So India's ability is incredibly stepped on. I think that makes India in general just really strong. But then on top of it, you get the Varu, which is very nice. Just nerfing your opponents. Again, elephant units, super fun. We love elephant units. They come early enough to where you can plan around them, and they aren't that bad to manage, or not that bad to build. Varus are great. And the Stepwell is pretty mid, honestly. Not the best improvement in the game. But they're there. You know, a little bit extra faith, a little bit extra food than you normally would get. So we take those, and you put it all together, and you have, in some games, what could be an incredibly strong Civ, especially if you get the wars going, because then you just fly in, you can just harass them with elephants and just completely murder them in a couple turns, because you just zoom in, you kill them, and you zoom out. Which is fantastic. But there's going to be games where you just can't do that, and you just have to rely on the AI expand their religion to you, which most of the time they do, so it's pretty strong. But there are games where they don't. Or what if you're playing Archipelago? What if you're playing one of these weird maps where you're kind of isolated for the most part? Then what do? Now you don't have two of your abilities. So it's like, again, he's in wild card because he can kind of go either way. But some games he's going to be amazing, and some games he's going to not. Next up, we have Cleopatra Egyptian, and it pains me to do it. This is going to be our first Civ and needs a buff. I love Egypt. I think she's really fun to play. But her abilities just need some tweaking. So you get your trade routes to other civs gives you +4 gold, and other civilizations get +2 food and +2 gold in return. And then trading with allies gives you double the points, which is nice. But that's just so okay. You know what I mean? +4 gold from your international trade routes. Just the card Canavisaries or whatever it's called alone gives you half of that. Just on its own, let alone when you get to triangle trade and like these other way stronger cards. This ability is just incredibly mid, as much as I hate to say it, because I love playing Egypt, but it's just not a very good ability at all. And we get to the other abilities, +15 production towards districts on one as you place next to river. That's really nice, especially the wonders, especially because the early game wonders, a lot of them really need to be on rivers. And a lot of the strongest wonders in general need to be placed on rivers. So that's a great bonus. But it's only 15. If it was 25, if it was 30, this would be a lot better. But 15 is not enough. Even if you combo it with the early card to make it 30, it doesn't feel as strong as you'd want it to. So I feel like that could use a buff as well. And doesn't receive damage from floods. That's really nice. You don't have to build dams, which is great, but a lot of times, sometimes you kind of want to. A lot of the time, sometimes. You want to build dams to boost your adjacency for industrial zones, things like that. I will say the Chariot Archer is really nice. +4 movement on a range unit in the early game. Oh my goodness, it's fantastic, especially because you're going to be on rivers a lot of the time as Egypt. So having that extra movement to move along and just murder barbs is so nice, and just defend yourself in general. So Chariot Archer is great, but it becomes irrelevant really fast since it is an archer replacement. And then the Sphinx is just okay. +1 faith and +1 culture. You can boost that up to more faith and more culture decently easily, especially with Egypt spawns. But it's just all right. There's better improvements out there. Nothing to write home about. It's not like you're going to be spamming out the Sphinx that early. But the tourism is nice. But you don't get any other bonuses towards tourism other than if you can spam out the wonders, which on deity, unless you have a ton of abilities towards spamming out wonders, not going to help that much. So overall, I like Egypt. They just need a boost. They just need a buff, and I think they'd be a really good civ. But other than that, or until that happens, which I doubt it will, that's where they're going to be. Next up, we have Ptolemaic Egypt. I'm probably butchering that, and I'm so sorry. And she's actually going to go in situationally great. Huge difference what a leader ability can make. But resources along floodplains receive +1 food and +1 culture. Own floodplains give you +1 appeal to adjacent tiles instead of -1. This just alone makes them so much better. Like, there are certain starts that you can get with Egypt that are nuts, where you just have insane growth and insane culture to start the game, and that just snowballs you, and that alone is enough to raise her up a few tiers. But that's why she's going to go in the situationally great tier, because it doesn't happen all the time. There's going to be starts where you're on floodplains and you don't have any wheat tiles, you don't have any rice tiles, you don't have any whatever, and you just don't get to use this bonus, which stinks. But the +1 appeal is incredibly underrated, especially if you can combo that with Eiffel Tower. Now Egypt is a lot better of a culture civ, and this Egypt is just so much more versatile, just from those two things alone. So that combo with all the other abilities makes them a lot better, and I think she could be situationally great. Again, with these leader pass leaders, you gotta give me a break. They haven't been out for very long at the time of this recording. They've only been out for, I think the final one just came out about a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So all these leaders are still very new. This is tier list 1.0 for a reason, so it is very much subject to change, but yeah, keep that in mind, please. Next up, we have Cyrus of Persia, who I have in the wild card tier as well. Honestly, very similar to the Chandragupta bonus, except you actually can control this one. So +2 movement for the first 10 turns after declaring a surprise war. That's huge. The thing about Cyrus you gotta just accept is that other civs probably aren't gonna like you when you play him if you're taking advantage of this bonus. Because even though it's only for 10 turns, you can declare war on someone, use the 10 turns, and then just declare a war on somebody else, even though you're not fighting them, just to reset the 10 turns. So you can really abuse that to get some insane movement, especially if you're going like Horseman Rush or whatever you're doing. So this ability is very nice if you can get it to work. Again, same thing applies to all early war candidates, which is we're playing on deity. A lot of times they're going to have a lot better units than you. You're going to have a lot of units to kill, and they're going to have walls everywhere. So if you can get through that, he's amazing. Or if you can get a neighbor that's not really that defensive, he's amazing. But again, having those games is pretty tricky. On top of that, you get +1 trader capacity with political philosophy. That's really nice. You get that very early. And +2 gold and +1 culture for routes in between your own cities. I'm someone that I very much value that. I love internal trade outs, especially early. So +2 gold, +1 culture early is very good. But I also understand people who love to do only international, get their economy going. But I'm someone who plays with some mods, and one of the mods I use is Quick Deals. So Quick Deals kind of makes early international trade outs not nearly as valuable because you can get that gold otherwise. But again, that's not for everyone. That's just how I play personally. Next up for Persia, we have the Immortal. It's a melee and a ranged unit, which is exciting, but they're not that strong. They're just kind of a wacky, zany unit that's there, which is nice, I guess. And then you have their unique building, +1 culture, +2 golds with bonuses and tourism. Again, these tourism ones, I truly cannot speak to how good they are in the context of all culture civs because I'm just not a culture player. But this one seems like it could be decent if there weren't such building restrictions. Can't build it on any snow, tundra, anything like that, which is quite annoying. But hey, extra culture on random tiles is pretty nice. So overall, on the games where you're going to be able to make use of that plus movement, my man's going to be insane. He's going to just roll through, especially again with like horseman rushes. You get 6 movement. That's so gross. You just zoom in there, murder someone, and zoom out. And that's a great strat in Civ 6. So if you can get it to work, he's great. But there's going to be a lot of games where you either can't war someone or they war you or whatever the situation is. You can't use his Fall of Babylon ability. Or there's going to be games where you really want external trade routes and you're not using internal trade routes. The Immortal is just okay overall. So he can kind of flip-flop depending on the game. But I think there are games where he's incredibly strong. And people act like he's like a mid or a bad Civ. And I don't think that's true. I think he can be really good. Next up, we have Dido, who I have in the situationally great tier. I think she goes at the top. So Dido, what she has, she can move her capital. as a city project, which you're going to use for some interesting strats if you want to. But she also gets +1 trade route capacity for the government plaza and each government plaza building. That's super nice. And 50% production towards districts in the city with the government plaza. That's also super nice. And then on top of that, her main ability, you start with a Eureka for writing. That's fine. But coastal cities founded by Phoenicia located on the same continent are 100% loyal. Huge on true start location maps, or maps are just kind of like stuck together with other civs. But the main thing is settlers get +2 movement and +2 sight when they're embarked, and they ignore movement costs when embarking and disembarking. What this means is, and on top of that, let me not stop there. You also get a free, or you get a unique harbor, which is great. Unique harbors. Harbor buildings are usually pretty tough to build, so getting to knock out the district in half the time is very good. But your unique harbor gives you 50% production towards naval units and settlers in this city, which is incredible. And then she has the Byreme to protect those settlers and to early war someone. You could literally just murder a city-state right next to you if you want to with the Byremes. So what that means is all of her abilities combo together, where you start off kind of slow. You might want to get an early builder and make your capital pretty good. You plop down your government building or your government plaza. You knock out Ancestral Hall. You throw in the colonization card, and now you're building settlers in 150% of the time, and you spam out your settlers on the coast. You build your Kothon in half the time now that you've got your government plaza down, and you just have insane settler spam like no other Civ. And as we know, Civ 6 is a game where you want to be settling everywhere. So she is one of the best settler spams out there. The downside is that you're going to be doing it on the coast. You want to settle. She's fantastic in archipelago, continents, and islands, all of your coastal maps. So if you don't get a coastal map, yikes. But if you do, she's absolutely gross, which is why she's in situationally great. Because on certain setups, she can just have 15 cities, 16 cities by the time you get to like turn 80, which is just insane. And then you're set up to win the game from there, even though obviously cities on small islands, things like that, aren't going to be nearly as good as your biggest cities that are inland. She can just absolutely spam like nobody else can. And in a game like Settler Spam, or a game like Civ 6 where Settler Spam is very important, Dido can be incredibly strong. But she's in a situation great because there are going to be games where you're not on the coast, where you don't have any early neighbors near you, where everybody swarms you at the beginning and you can't really do your Settler Spam just yet. She's not perfect, but in certain situations, she's pretty close to it. Next up, we have Eleanor of Aquitaine, I believe. And I have Eleanor in tier 5. I don't think she's as bad as everyone says she is. Is she one of the best civs in the game? No. But is she the worst of the game? No. I truly don't see how people can put her as the worst city in the game. I just don't get it. So to go through abilities, she has a mismatch of what a lot of other civs have, but she has the Eleanor special, the loyalty for great works of art and things like that per city, -1 for every great work that she has. Obviously, we all know the memes of taking over the world peacefully. You can do that with this Eleanor. On top of that, free cities just flip to you immediately. Instead of becoming a free city, they just flip to you. Again, on certain starts, even if you're not on True Start, on certain starts where you're jammed in together, this can get really out of hand, especially if you're spamming out Great Works and you can get an early Golden Age when everyone else is in a Dark Age, you're playing on Dramatic Ages, whatever. This ability is nuts. We all know what France Eleanor can do. You can still do that with this Eleanor. It's just not as easy to do. On top of that, you get the England bonuses, which is a bunch of random stuff. Better military engineers, better iron and coal, extra yields from powered buildings, extra stockpiles for your harbors you're going to be spamming out regardless, and 100% production, or you build military engineers in half the time. All those are just random little bonuses thrown in together that are all really nice. Are they game breaking? No, but they're just nice to have. And the 20% production towards industrial zone buildings, very nice as well. You have the Sea Dog, which disappointing coming from Civ 5 from the ship of the line. Sea Dogs are not nearly as good. You have the chance to capture enemy ships. But naval warfare in Civ 6 just doesn't happen that much. There's a lot of maps where you just don't have that much coast, or people just aren't on the coast, or the AI just doesn't settle coast. It's like they just don't do it. So at least in D80 AI, naval warfare rarely happens unless you're on like an archipelago map. And even then, they rarely aggress on the water from what I've noticed. So you're probably not going to get a lot of value out of this unless you're just spamming them out. Which you totally could do if you want to. Privateers are just like a very random unit and are just not the best. I'd much rather just have a ranged naval unit than a privateer. Even though it does have range abilities, I'd rather have battleships, I'd rather have frigates, etc. But the Royal Navy Dockyard is very, very nice. You get rid of the movement penalty for embarking, which is great. You get +1 movements from units built. You build them in half the time. Again, unique harbors are very, very nice. So there is that, which is wonderful. But the problem is that a lot of people are probably going to tell you is that Eleanor's abilities don't really sync up. She has a lot of stuff that give you a lot of very nice bonuses, but none of them synchronize together, really. So it just you're just left with a Civ that can kind of do everything okay. But not bad, which is why she's in the solo tier. She's not a bad Civ. Again, I don't get how people can call her the worst Civ in the game. It just doesn't synchronize that well. So that's Eleanor of England. Alternatively, next up we have Eleanor of France, who I, of course, gotta have just the definition, honestly, of a wild card Civ. Or a situationally great, actually, my bad. But wild card in the sense of her abilities. So she gets all the French abilities that we talked to, Garde Imperiale, Chateau, Building Wonders early. But she also gets the Court of Love that we just talked about. And this Eleanor can do it a lot better. You get a lot better culture bonuses early. So you can really start to spam out your theater squares. And you're kind of just more geared towards a culture game in general. So you're more encouraged to build theater squares, even though you could do it with the other Eleanor. This one, it makes a lot more sense to in most games. And she can really, really snowball. When you're playing against deity, it's a lot harder, especially if you're not playing with secret societies and stuff. Oh my god, I should have mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm not considering any game modes here. So no secret societies, no disaster, no heroes, none of that. We're just talking about vanilla Civ. So with that in mind, it's harder to do the peaceful domination that way, but it still can be done, especially more towards the mid to late game. She can get nutty. You just take a city, then you suddenly take a second city, then you suddenly take a third, and then you just keep going, and you get more and more great works, more and more loyalty pressures. You can use spies to lower loyalty, use Victor and Amani to lower loyalty in people's cities, and you just start to take over the world just by smiling at them, and it's great. She might be the most fun Civ to play, which certainly gives her points for something, but she's not the best. But in those situations where you can get rolling, she is gross. She's so overpowered. But again, that's a very specific strat and a very specific scenario. There's going to be a lot of games as Eleanor where the AI just suddenly happen to want to love writers and they just spam out all the great writers, all the great works of art before you can get to them. Or you get declared war on and you have nothing to defend yourself and you just have these you just have these theater squares everywhere. So she can get rolled just as well as she rolls. But on the games where she rolls, she's quite good. The next Civ we're going to talk about is Elizabeth, who I have in situationally great. Elizabeth is really solid, but again, these new Civs, it's a lot harder to tell, but let's just go into what makes her good. So Elizabeth, she gets 2 trade route slots once she gets a first Great Admiral. You're going to be getting Great Admirals just all the time as England because the AI doesn't really prioritize harbors that much, so you can just kind of get Great Admirals the entire game and just have like a monopoly on them. So getting your first one is very easy. So getting 2 trade route slots from that is very good. On top of the trade route slot you're going to get from getting the Lighthouse anyway, That means England's going to have 4 trade routes really early, which is incredibly good. But then on top of that, you get +3 gold from every special district in your origin city. That's not that great at first. You can honestly get away with doing internal trade routes to start the game if you want to. But as the game goes on, that's going to get better and better and better, especially when you combo that with Whistle Banking and things like that. That's a very solid bonus. Not incredibly amazing, but very solid. 100+ yields from plundering trade routes with naval units. That doesn't really come up that much. Again, the whole naval combat thing isn't as popular as it used to be, but when it does come up, it's a nice little bonus. And then they get all of England's normal stuff. So Sea Dog, Royal Navy Dockyard, all that fun stuff. Royal Navy Dockyard is your main thing you're going to be using with Elizabeth. You'll want to get those trade routes up as soon as possible and start getting your economy going crazy. She's really solid. And again, when you can get her stuff going and you can get set up, she has a very strong all-around game. But again, the biggest problem with a lot of coastal civs is you're not always going to be able to get that set up. So we've already talked about what all of these abilities do, so you already know that. So I have her in Situation Great, kind of right in the middle. Like some games, you're going to have a great setup and it's going to be a really fun time. You're going to make a trade agreement with England, the whole meme. But some games you're not going to be able to. So I have her in Situation Great for now. Again, this is the newest leader at the time of recording. She just came out about a week or so ago. So very new. I could be totally off with this. She could be not that strong. She could be way stronger and I'm underrating her. We don't know. So only time will tell with that one. So next up we have good old Germany, who of course, I'm sure you've heard it a million times, Germany's S tier. Germany's S tier. Let's go over why. So they get an additional military policy slot. That is incredibly underrated. Yes, military policy slots are the worst in the game, but a policy slot's still a policy slot. It can honestly save your ass very early on in the game if someone decides to declare war on you, which again, Civ 6 deity, they love to do that. So having that extra slot to have a Gogi and like the extra gold from units or like whatever combo you're going to do is very nice. And then +7 combat strength when attacking city-states. Most of the time, you don't want to attack city-states. The suzerain bonuses in this game are pretty good across the board. And just the basic bonuses you get from just putting envoys into city-states is also really good. Especially as Germany with your Hansas. So you're not going to use that most of the time. Sometimes if a city-state's like really bad and it's just in your way, sure. But for the most part, kind of an bonus. But what makes Germany insane is that they can build an extra district than the usual. That is incredible. We have talked about how important district spam is in this game, and just getting a free extra district and all of your cities makes every single one of your cities way better, and it's just an incredible bonus. It can't be understated how good that is. Then they have the U-boats. U-boats are fine. They're nothing crazy. Submarines are pretty weak overall, and again, naval combat doesn't come up that much. But hey, if you're fighting people over the water this late in the game, go for it. But again, the other thing that makes Germany insane is the Hansas. Again, production is king. Hansas just better. Industrial zones, you can spam them out in all your cities. And the thing that makes Germany so good is that they kind of have a slow start. But once they get rolling, once they get their Hansas in all their cities, they are just insane. They build everything super fast. They spam out wonders, spam out science projects, like literally whatever you want to do. And they're nuts. The only downside to them, the reason why I have Basil over them, is because they do have a slow start. Whereas, while around the time that Germany is going to be getting going, Basil's going to be getting close to Dromans at that point, and then the game's over. So they can take a little bit, and if you're playing them in like a multiplayer setting, people will just rush you as Germany because they know you can't do anything about it. So keep that in mind, but most of the time that's not going to happen, and you're going to be able to get your Hansas up and just be an absolute menace. So Germany, incredibly good civ, just an absolute treat across the board. Next up, we have good old Gandhi, who I surprisingly have in tier 4. I got him in wildcard tier. So Gandhi's ability gets all the India stuff, but gets +5 faith for every civ they have met that is founded a religion that's not currently at war. That's just okay. Really nice in the early game, especially if you're playing Pangaea. Because you get a lot of faith very early and makes your monumentality is really strong. And opposing civs receive double the war wariness for fighting against Gandhi. That's not really going to come up much on deity AI. As I'm sure you've noticed, the AI just can get away with anything. They can just fully nuke someone and nobody cares. But the second you defend yourself from war, everyone hates you. It's a whole thing. But that's not really going to be that important. The thing that I have Gandhi in the wild card is for the religion ability we talked about already, the Dharma. Again, I've already gone into what makes it so good. If you want to see why, I'm going to go look at the Chandragupta part of the list. But it's an incredible ability. It's just wild card because you're not going to, even though in 90% of your deity games, the AI is going to spam their religion to you, you can't guarantee it. So there are going to be games where people don't find you, or the people that are near you, your neighbors, don't have a religion, and then your religion's just okay, and you're just playing a civ with some Varus, which is nice. I do love Varus, but without the Dharma ability, they can be very lacking, and there are going to be games where that happens. So since his ability is kind of out, the best part of his ability is out of your control, that is what puts him lower. Honestly, I'd rather play Amanitore than him, so just barely making in the wildcard tier. But when you can play him and when he does work and they're spreading their religion to you, oh boy, it is a good time. Next up, we have Genghis Khan. And I really wrestled with what tier to put him in. But the more I thought about it, the more I talked myself into it. Genghis Khan is a god tier. He's really, really good. And we're going to go into why. So the thing about the god tier civs that you're probably realizing, other than Frederick, I guess, is a lot of them have very good synergy and all of their abilities work together. And early in the tier list, I mentioned that if you're going to be a war civ, you better be a good one. And Genghis Khan is just that. So what he does, all his cavalry units get +3 combat strength and have a chance to defeat enemy cavalry class units. On deity, that's a lot better than you'd think. The deity AI loves to just build heavy chariots and horsemen quite a bit. So you're going to get a decent amount of use out of that and just get some free units, which is great. And then +3 is really nice. But where Genghis Khan gets crazy is when you combine all of his abilities. So he has the Keshig, which is a unique crossbow replacement. I think it's a crossbow replacement. That's 4 movement, which is amazing, and can escort civilian units, which is fine. But hey, it's nice. But basically, you build out all your horses, your cavalry, your Keshigs, your knights, you know, whatever units you want to stack up together. You make this huge cavalry army that all have +3. You plop a bunch of encampments down, get your Ordus going, so now your cavalry are even more insane. They get more movement, they get more experience, all that fun stuff. So you have this insane cavalry army, and you get a bunch of great generals out. So now you're at +13 combat strength all units, and then you send a trade route to the enemy you want to fight. 1, it builds a road to them, but 2, it instantly creates a trading post, which normally wouldn't be that good, but Genghis Khan gets an extra level of diplomatic visibility for having a trade route, which means he gets extra combat strength, and that 13 plus combat strength turns into 16 plus combat strength, and you get to spies, and then it turns into 19. And if you want to go a religion and you really want to go for it, that turns into 29 combat strength if you're going crusade and religion. Obviously, you don't have to go religion as Genghis Khan, so 19 is more realistic, especially on deity. But that's insane. And of course, they're all horse units, which means you just fly in there, murder them, and take all their stuff. Which is incredible. It's so strong. It's ridiculous. If they don't build walls, it is a free win. It's insane. So Genghis, incredible civ. All the stuff just goes together very well. His one negative is that if they put up a bunch of walls, if they're super defensive, or if they're a war civ themselves, or like let's say they're Vietnam or something that's very good at defense, it can be a bit rough, like all early wars can. But for the most part, you're just gonna roll people as Genghis Khan. He's insane. Complete opposite 180 here. Next up we have Gilgamesh Eats Hot Sauce, aka Gilgamesh, aka Gilgabro, aka probably the worst civ in the game. As much as it pains me to say it, as much as it's very fun to have Gilgamesh as your friend in a game, when you are playing as him, it is not great. So what he does is when he's at war with a common foe, they and their allies share pillage rewards. That's fine, but again, you don't want to buff the AI. Even when you are allied with them, you're doing it for yourself, obviously, not to help them, so that's not great. And their alliance points for being at war with a common foe, +5 combat strength. Again, that's nice. Not going to happen all the time, though, especially because ally ships take a little bit to get going. And the thing with Sumeria is you want to fight early, not late, because they get the war cart, which is an incredible unit right from the get-go. It's 4 movement, very strong. You can build it immediately. No unit requirements. You can just start spamming them out. And they're very strong. And if you get really lucky with Sumeria and you have someone that's very close to you that has majority flatland that you could just fly over there with your war carts and kill them, hey, he's great. But that's a very, 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 very specific scenario. And most of the time that's not going to happen, especially on deity when they have a bunch of warriors. And by the time you get your war carts out, he could have, or the other AI could be going your way anyway. Most of the time, you're not going to be able to take advantage of the war carts. And then you're left with his other abilities, which are when you capture a bar post or tribal village, you get gold, and you pay half the cost to levy citizen units. Paying half the cost is nice, but again, not that great. I'm not someone that really values levying city-states that much. It can be nice, but the majority of the time, the city-state you want to levy, the AI already has, because they get extra envoys, and it's just, especially on deity, it's not going to be that reliable. And then he has a unique improvement, the Zuggurat, which in theory is good. +2 science, +1 culture. That's really nice. But you're going to be placing these on you want to put them on rivers because to get that culture. But then your river tiles are most likely going to be +2 food, +2 science, +1 culture, which is nice. That means you don't have any production. And as we know, production is king in this game. So you're sacrificing really good tiles to put wonders on and districts on for these improvements, which you don't really want anyway. Or the improvement is not good enough to take over those things. So what you're left with is a civ that has all these abilities that are all just fine or completely counteract what you're trying to do. And he's just left with basically the only ability that's nice is the Barb Outpost Tribal Village bonus. Which becomes obsolete after the first 20-ish turns, 30 turns. Poor Gilgamesh. He is not good. Love the guy, but he really needs a buff. If they continue updating this game, I really hope to see him get one. Next up, we have Gitarja, who I have all the way in great tier. I think, honestly, all the way at the top of great tier, I think she's really good. Gitarja is fantastic. She's so fun to play. One of the most fun civs to play in the game. And what she does is naval units can be purchased with faith, which is, you don't realize how nice that is or like how lacking that is from other civs until you have it. And you're like, wow, I don't have to do all this nonsense to get boats out. I could just get 3 boats out for free. That's so nice. And then on top of that, she gets +2 faith to city centers that are adjacent to the lake or coast. Most of the time, she's going to be spawning on a lake or coast. So what that means is, in most of your games, you're going to get the pantheon of your choice. You're going to get first pantheon, unless Molly's in the game or the AI just spawns on top of a relic or stuff like that. The majority of the time, you're going to get first pantheon, which means you're going to get religious settlements, which means you're going to start the game with 2 settlers, which is incredible. That might as well be part of her kit, because that's what's going to happen most of the time. And starting with religious settlements is incredible. It's so good. It's the best pantheon. If you don't know why, check out my Pantheon video, shameless plug. But it's so good. Getting your cities going that early is just invaluable. But on top of that, coast and lake tiles get minor adjacency bonuses from holy sites, campuses, industrial zones, theater squares, and all that fun stuff. +1 amenity from your entertainment complexes, which is fine. You don't really notice that one, but the adjacency bonus to your districts is amazing. Again, you're going to be on coast and lake tiles the majority of the time, so that really starts to add up as the game goes on. And of course, you can stack that with putting districts next to each other, government plaza, etc. And you can get some really fun city layouts. It's a very fun civ to play, again. On top of that, she also has the Kampung, which is one of the best improvements in the game. When it works, you get +1 production and +1 housing and +1 food for each fishing boat, which is fantastic, especially if you get a decent coastal start. More production and housing and tourism as you go through, but it has to be on coast or lake. Which isn't that bad. That's pretty doable, but sometimes you don't really get the best Kampung placements. And then she also has the Zhang, which is a frigate replacement. That's fantastic any just better version of the frigate is great. Frigates are already probably the best naval unit in the game, at least timing wise. That bumps up escort movement speed and +5 combat strength when in a formation. That's not that great. I mean, you can do some fun things where you just have a Zhang builder army and just have like all these Zhangs with builders and just send them out. It's kind of a fun meme. But other than that, the movement speed is what you want because you're kind of like mini Dido at that point, and you can settle on the coast a lot faster than people expect you to. So you put all that together. Again, civs that have good synergy are going to be good civs. And Gitarja is great. Again, that's why she's in the great tier. Love playing Gitarja. She is wonderful. Next up, we have Gorgo, who, speaking of great, I also have in great tier. I'm going to put her right next to Gitarja. Gorgo is fantastic. Greece in general is just super good in this game. And let's go over why. So her ability, her main ability is that you get half the culture for the combat strength of something you just killed. So what that translates to is you kill barbs and then you get just instant culture for that, which means you fly through the early game civics tree, which is fantastic, which means Gorgo just gets to get her first government very quickly, gets to have combat boosts immediately and support bonuses to continue to boost her own combat strength, and can just get rolling a lot faster culture-wise. And early culture is the best culture in this game. So that's fantastic. She also gets +1 combat strength for every military policy slot slotted. That's not that great because, again, military policy slots are not that good. But she can make use of that, and it scales to the late game. So if you combo that with oligarchy and some other things, she can start to stack up some pretty high combat strength bonuses, and you can have some like crazy like bombers with insane combat strength with that. But again, that's a little more niche, but it can definitely work. But her other thing that's amazing is she just straight up starts the game and just has Forbidden City in her cities, aka she gets a wildcard policy slot in every government. That's so nice. Wildcard policy slots are the best in the game. And just being able to do whatever you want from the get-go is incredibly nice. Having extra reduction and God King at the beginning of the game is great, etc., etc. It gets better and better as the game goes on. Wild card policy slots are amazing. On top of that, she also gets the Hoplite, which is one of the best unique units in the game. +10 combat strength. There's another adjacent Hoplite. That's a very, very, very easy bonus to trigger. And you combo that again with her ability and with oligarchy and with a great general or like whatever you want to put, and she can really get nasty very quickly. On top of that, she also has the Acropolis, which is one of the only theater square or the unique theater squares in the game. I think one of only 2. And theater squares are already like kind of annoying to build because getting the adjacency for them you have to plan for quite a bit ahead of time. So getting theater squares that just for free get boosted because for being on hills is so nice. So having like high adjacency theater squares is a rare thing in this game and fantastic. And it also just gives you an envoy, which is amazing. It's going to be amazing for the other Greece, which we'll get to. But just free envoys is so nice because it just continues to give you free bonuses, and then it just pays itself forward. So Gorgo's fantastic. Greece in general is fantastic. Just such a good civ. Not quite god tier, because I don't think her stuff synergizes nearly as well as another civ we'll get to. But she's still fantastic. Just an absolute treat to play. And just a really good time. Every now and then you're going to have games where you don't have any barbs near you and you don't get to use that early culture, which really sucks. But wildcard policy slots are always going to be good. Hoplites are always going to be good. Acropolises are always going to be good. And Gorgo's just going to be a good time. Okay, oh boy. Next up we have Hammurabi, who is the civ I struggle to rank the most because he probably has the highest skill ceiling of any civ. So I have him at the very top of situationally great. And I'm sure you guys all know this by now, but let's go over his abilities. Hammurabi's main ability is not even his ability. It's the Babylon ability. All Eurekas that you can get grant all of the science for all of your technologies, but you have a 50% penalty to science for the entire game. So that 50% penalty really hurts in the early game. You feel that. It sucks. But if you are an experienced player who knows how to finesse Eureka's and knows what to do to boost everything, Hammurabi is insane. There are a ton of strats you can do, like rushing crossbow, rushing man-at-arms, rushing musketmen. I've seen bomber rushes. I've seen some insane stuff that you can do with him because you can just instantly unlock a super late game tech out of nowhere and then just snowball the game through it. The problem that you're going to run into the most with Babylon is a lot of the times you unlock techs too fast and you don't have the production to make up for it. So what people tend to do is rush industrial zones with him to really boost their production to make up for the crazy units they're going to get, and then win a domination victory by turn 50 or whatever they do. So if you just look up on YouTube, Babylon, insert turn here, win, I'm sure you'll find a million videos. Very, very good, very, very strong, but can be inconsistent. There are going to be games where you are like, oh, here we go, crossbow rush. You do it, you get a crossbow, you upgrade your units, you walk over, and then the deity just upgrade to man-at-arms, and you're like, what the? Like sometimes it could be a little slower than you'd like it to, and your plans can come crashing down, but his ability right there is just insane, and that's not even countering all the other stuff he gets. He also has a unique unit that gets plus 17 combat strength against cav units. It's nice. It's very niche, but it's nice, especially when you're getting rushed by a barb horseman. It can be a lifesaver, or if a neighbor rushes you. But the thing that's also amazing about Babylon is the Palgum. It's a city center building that replaces a water mill, I believe, and it gives you +2 production and then +1 food on all your fresh water tiles. And that doesn't have to be like Cleopatra's ability where it has to be like a rice tile, it has to be a wheat tile. It's just all of your fresh water tiles. So your cities start to grow and get a lot better production out of nowhere. Just boom, as soon as you build the Palgum. So it's very, very, very good. And then on top of that, he also has his main ability, which is once you build a district, except for the government plaza, you instantly get the first building that you can get in that district. So if you're putting down an industrial zone, boom, you instantly get a workshop. If you're putting down a campus, boom, you immediately get a library, stuff like that. Just shaves off a bunch of turns. Super nice. Just such a random ability, but it's very nice. And on top of that, you get an envoy when any other district is constructed for the first time. So you just get a couple free envoys. Just really nice. Babylon has a lot of really fun, nice abilities. Very fun civ to play. But again, they can really backfire on you if you don't know what you're doing with them. So they definitely take a lot of practice. I definitely recommend watching people to learn how to play Babylon or different strategies. But at their peak, Babylon is the best civ in the game. And then there's other games where they're absolute garbage. So it can be tricky, but there is some really fun stuff you can do with great scientists that give you Eurekas. So you can just spam out campuses, spam great scientists, and then boom, just get a bunch of random text for free. Great library, all that fun stuff. So I have him in Situation Great because he just has such high variance that it feels weird to put him anywhere else. But there's absolutely an argument to put Hammurabi in Great or even God tier. Next up, we have the original Harald Hardrada, Esmeralda. I don't know how to say his name, but good old Harald, who I have in wild card tier. He's kind of similar to Chandragupta and Cyrus in that he is one of those civs where if you can get a good war going, he's incredible. And if you can't, you are SOL. So what he does is when he's coastal, he gets to have coastal rating for all naval melee units. That is really nice because most of the time he's going to be on the coast. And as we all know, barbs in Civ 6 are absolute menaces. So being able to absolutely just shut down barbs and get a bunch of free tribal huts is really, really nice. From your galleys, that is. And then on top of that, he gets 50% production towards all naval melee units. Then on top of that, he gets a unique galley, which is just super strong and fantastic. So what you can end up having with him is you spawn in, you immediately go for foreign trade, I think it's called, or whatever the first civic is. Get maritime industries, spam out like 4 boats, find a city state, and just kill them. Just get a free city from just exploring, which is incredible. Or if, God forbid, if there's another civ near you, you can just rush their capital. If they're fully coastal, they're dead. So Norway, incredibly strong in that regard. But on top of that, if they're going to get in a more long-term war, from the coastal raiding that they can do, they get absurd yields, especially if you put in the raid card as well. They just get crazy yields from pillaging. It's nuts how much you can boost yourself with. The problem is with this whole ability, as we've talked about, is that naval combat doesn't happen that much, especially if you're doing random maps, or if you're someone who only plays Pangea or only plays continents. Continents it's more common, but a lot of the times you're going to spawn in and either A, you're just not on the coast, or B, there's nobody else on the coast. So that's the biggest problem with Norway, is that a lot of times you're going to get some boats out and they're going to be like, uh-oh, no one's on the coast with me. I just wasted all this production on all these boats and they're just here now. And now I'm behind, I don't have settler, and it just kind of goes from there. Excuse my cats in the background. I'm playing around. But anyway, the rest of their abilities are kind of nice. They get to travel over ocean at shipbuilding. That's a lot earlier than cartography, so that's very nice. If you are playing Archipelago, that means you can really settle all over the world very quickly, which is great. And they ignore movement costs from embarking and disembarking. Again, that's very nice. On top of that, they get the Berserker, who is not the best unit ever. The cities that you're attacking on deity tend to have walls and tend to have ranged units in them. So having that -5 combat strength when defending is pretty rough. Luckily, it's only from defending melee, but it still is pretty noticeable, especially on deity when they have a lot of melee units from the get-go. So that can be pretty tricky, but when you can get Berserkers to work, they're really fun. That +4 movement from a melee unit is super nice, at least when you're in enemy territory. Already talked about the Viking Longship, and then the Stave Church is just okay. Getting some extra production from your temples is really nice, but I mean, you could always go work ethic or whatever you want to do. So you put all that together and you have a civ that on some games can be absolutely oppressive and be so good and just insane, and then other games where they just kind of feel like a base civ. So that is the definition of wildcard to me. And that is why they're in the wildcard tier. Next up, we have the other form of Herald, who is also going to go in the wild card tier, and that is the uglier Herald, the Herald Varangian. I believe is how you pronounce that. God, we gotta get my man some better outfits. This helmet is not working. Anyway, so he has all the abilities that normal Herald does, but he also gets, instead of the insane pillaging ability and the coastal raiding ability, he gets a 75% discount on levying units, and levied units receive culture, faith, and science equal to kills, similar to like what Gorgo does. So Herald is also one of the newest civs, so I haven't really gotten a chance to practice him that much. I only played one game as him. But the 75 discount is pretty good. You can get some really cheap units. He's the definition of a wild card because, again, if you get in a situation where there's a city-state right in between you and who you want to war, boom, you grab their units, you walk over, you get a bunch of bonuses like your pillaging stuff, and it's just really nice. It's very nice. But he's even more so a wild card because, again, we've already talked about it, but levying units is extremely inconsistent because a lot of the time the city-state that you want is very far away from you, or the city-state that's right in between you, the enemy already has. So it can be very tricky. You can beeline it. You can go Amani as your first governor, and hopefully get lucky with some tribal huts and other things. But his ability can be absolutely useless in a lot of games. So that is why he is in wildcard tier. But the games where it works is very good. And then you combine that with his other abilities, and it makes he can have some really fun games. But there's also going to be a lot of games where they're not that fun. Other Herald and wildcard as well. But I kind of put him towards the bottom of wildcard because he's a lot harder to make work. Next up, we have Hojo, and this man is definitely S tier. I am going to put him all the way at the top of S tier for now, and we will get to why. So, Hojo of Japan, land units get +5 combat strength in land tiles adjacent to coast. That's most of the time not going to come up. But hey, nice when you have it. Naval units receive +5 combat strength in shallow water tiles. That is very nice, especially for dealing with early barbs. And then he can build basically half of the districts in half the time for no reason. It's super nice. He just can spam out districts really easily. And units don't receive damage from hurricanes. That's almost never going to come up. But hey, nice in theory. And civs that are at war with Japan receive 100% unit damage from hurricanes. Again, probably never going to come up, but if it does, great. But the thing that makes Japan insane is one ability and one ability only, and that is all districts receive an additional standard JC bonus for being next to another district. That is crazy. What that means is, in Civ 6, it's already a game where you want to spam out districts and you want to put your cities close together. Japan is the absolute god of that and the absolute god of districts. You spam these districts out, put them all together, and just by the time you get to the mid to late game, you have disgusting districts. It's so crazy what you can do with this man. Super fun, so you can get super creative with it. One of the best abilities in the game, hands down, and just this ability alone, in my opinion, puts him in god tier. I think it's just an incredible bonus. On top of that, he gets the samurai, which you have to get in the civics tree, I believe, so it's a little weird, but he can get pretty early game culture, so that's not really a problem most of the time. That replaces him in arms, no combat penalties when damaged. Most of the time, that's not really going to come up, but hey, nice when it does. And then he has the electronics factory, which I believe is a workshop replacement, that just gives you culture once you research technology. Or once you research electricity. So super nice, just free culture for doing stuff you're going to do already. But again, the main thing about Japan is the district's ability. Am I overrating them? Maybe. But in my opinion, I think it's just the best ability, maybe the best ability in the game, hands down. And they are just a treat to play. Play Japan and tell me you don't have a good time. You know what I mean? Next up, we have Jadwiga, who, unfortunately, we're gonna have another needs a buff tier, but she's at the top of it, so that's nice. But oh man, how Poland has fallen from grace when it comes to Civ. So let's get into the problems. So Jadwiga, her majority religion becomes a dominant religion in cities that lose a tile to a Polish culture bomb. In theory, that's really nice for spreading religion, but it's just not going to happen that much. Yes, she can culture bomb adjacent tiles from building an encampment, or a fort inside enemy territory. But again, you don't want encampments that much. Is the problem. Yes, you get bonuses to putting encampments down, but the bonuses you get from putting down the encampments as Jadwiga are not that good to justify having them all over your empire. She also gets a bonus to relics, which is fine, but in the vast majority of the games, unless you're forcing candy in your game, which I'm considering this as you just have random city states, most of the time that's not going to happen. So you just are going to have, it's just luck if you get a relic or not, if you get one relic, let alone two. So that bonus usually doesn't come into play. One military policy slot in current government is converted to wild card slot. That's nice. Having extra wild card slots is cool, but Gorgo literally just gets an extra wild card slot, let alone converting it. So that's just fine. She does have the Wing Hussar, which is a very good unit. Replaces the thing past knights. And in between tanks that push the enemies back, which can be really fun, but a lot of the times you don't want to push them back. You just kind of want to hit them and kill them. So it can be kind of annoying, but it is a very strong unit. That she also gets, I think it's a unique market or unique bank, where it basically makes your international trade routes a little more like domestic, and your domestic a little more like, international. But the problem is it doesn't give you a high enough bonus to either to make it worth it. It's just a nice little boost, but nothing crazy. You put all that together and you just have a civ that has like just some okay bonuses, and that's it. So really sucks. Again, Jadwiga, quite the fall from grace from Civ 5, but the extra wildcard slot and the Winged Hussar can win you some games, or at least the Winged Hussar, if you go for like a really strong push for it, can be pretty good. But all that considered, man, woof, Jadwiga, not very good. Next up, we have Jayavarman of the Khmer, and woof, do we actually, never mind. Jay is one of the best civs in the game. And I immediately was like, maybe Japan's the best civ in the game, but the Khmer are crazy. So let's get into what makes this man so ridiculous. So first off, holy sites are granted major adjacency bonuses to rivers, a culture bomb, and food equal to its adjacency bonus, and +2 housing. So you literally just get free river goddess, except for the amenity, from putting your holy sites in rivers, and you get better adjacency because it's a major adjacency bonus. So you can combo that with other districts together in your commercial hubs and your industrial zones and your aqueducts. I don't know why I can't talk right now, but you just put stuff on rivers, and then you combo this with river goddess, which the AI literally never takes. So you combo that with extra housing and free amenities for putting your holy sites on rivers, and Jay just has the most disgusting holy sites in the game, and that's without your religion. That's before you even get your religion. You go feed the world with him, and he's just gross. His cities essentially turn into just these absolute powerhouse, like 15 population cities. It's so gross, because that also combos with cities with an aqueduct, so you have +1 amenity from entertainment, +1 faith for every population, and farms will have +2 food if adjacent to an aqueduct, and +1 faith. The farm bonus, if you put them in triangles near holy sites, if you combo that, can get pretty crazy. And again, what Jay does is he just gets a ridiculous amount of food, a ridiculous amount of faith, and just dominates the game. He is like the best faith civ in the game. And arguably the best civ in the game, because we're not even done. He also gets the Domri, which, woo, yay, more elephants, which is just a higher, just a better trebuchet, and can move and shoot on the same turn, which completely negates the whole problem with siege units. The reason you don't want to build siege units is you have to move them in, you have to stop them, and then you have to shoot. Jay doesn't have to worry about that. He just walks in with these elephants and just murders you with faith, God, and food, and it's ridiculous. And then on top of that, he gets an even better temple that just gives you extra culture and extra faith, and tourism later on in the game. So Jay is just disgusting. He can go domination, he can go culture, he can go science, he can do literally anything. It's so gross. Please nerf the civ. It doesn't make any sense. But when you get to play Jay, it's just a free win. So enjoy that. Next up, we have Zhao, aka Portugal, who I have in the situationally great tier. Again, this is another one where I struggled to not put him higher, because Zhao can have some pretty nutty games, but I think he's the definition of situationally good. So why is that? First of all his units just get +1 sight. That's really nice. You don't realize how good that is until you haven't played him in a while, and then you're just like, God, just this extra scouting is so nice. So that's really great. +1 trade route capacity for every civ he meets, and open borders with city-states. Again, open border with city-states is also super nice. Basically, Zhao is just like a scouting powerhouse. You can absolutely just fiend for tribal huts. It's so good. But the big thing about him is trade routes. He's a trade route civ. Boom, you meet everybody. If you're playing a standard map, you just get a free +8 trade routes, which is so gross. And then on top of that, he does have restrictions. You can only send trade routes from a coastal city that can reach, you can only send international trade routes. They have to be from a coastal city or a city that has a harbor, and to another city that is coastal or has a harbor. But if you do, you just get double the yields, essentially. And traders have basically double the range. So what this means is you get a bunch of trade routes just for existing, and then you spread them all out in the water, and you get absurd stuff from them. You want to be as friendly as possible, because Zhao is quite possibly the best Whistlebankin civ in the game. If you don't know what Whistlebankin is, it's one of the best cards in the game that you get pretty early. That makes it so that if you're trading with a city-state that you're suzerain with, or if you trade with an ally, all of your city-states get, all of your trade routes to those allies get +2 food and +2 production. So what that means is this is basically what Jadwiga is trying to do. It makes your international trade routes insane, especially with Zhao, because it turns into a trade route that's giving you +2 food, +2 production, and like 30 gold and science and culture if you add the other card onto it. So Zhao is just an absolute trade route powerhouse. And then it doesn't stop there. He also gets the Now, which is a caravel that starts with free promotion. That's very nice. Most of the time, you're going to want to put movement on it because you're not really trying to fight with it now. What you're trying to do is throw them into city-states or throw them into your allies, and you build his unique improvement, which those provide +4 gold and +1 culture, or +1 production to the tile that it's on. But it also gives you those yields if you trade with that city that has the improvement in it. So again, it makes his trade routes with those cities disgusting. Each Now that he gets 2 charges, so you can really just go around and buff all of your trade routes. And he gets, once you get to the mid-late game, Zhao is gross. He just prints money. It's ridiculous. He also gets insane yields if you're comboing all your cards right. And he's just fantastic. Not to mention, he also gets a navigation school, 25% production toward naval units. That's just okay. You'd rather just have maritime industries in. But he also gets +1 science for every 2 coastal or lake tiles. That's really nice. So Zhao is just incredible if you get the right setup. The problem is, if you're not on the coast, you're literally screwed. And if you're on the coast and your cities aren't that good, which a lot of coastal cities take a long time to get set up, you're just a sitting duck. The AI can absolutely target you, and they absolutely will if you are not careful. So Zhao can get absolutely screwed over. I have a few clips from my stream of this exact thing happening, and it's very sad. But that's not going to happen all the time. The games where you can get set up, Zhao is just gross, and an incredible civ to play. Next up, we have John Curtin, who I have in the great tier. I think he kind of goes smack dab in the middle, but I kind of think he has some pretty high potential. And what Australia does, literally double production if they've either received a declaration of war or liberated a city. The AI is going to war you on deity. It's just going to happen. And if it's a game where you're playing John Curtin, congratulations. They just literally did the meme, call the ambulance, but not for me. Because you can just spam out units at them, and it's ridiculous. Double production is so stupid. So that's really strong. If you don't get declared war on, you can actually finesse this one decently well. Not as easily as Persia can, but again, deity AI, what do they love to do? They love to murder city-states for no reason. And you can absolutely just abuse that, declare war, liberation, free a city-state, and now boom, all of your stuff is twice as fast. Very, very, very good. It doesn't stop there though. He gets +3 housing from you in coastal cities. What that means is if you settle coastal, it's basically like you're settling on fresh water, which is so nice. One of the biggest problems about settling coastal is a lot of times you can't get fresh water, even or you have to settle really awkwardly because you need to get an aqueduct down. But not having to worry about that is fantastic. He also just randomly pastures trigger a culture bomb. Not super powerful, but just really nice. You can forward some of the AI really funnily if they have a couple horses set up in a specific way. You can just boom boom, take a bunch of their land, which is kind of fun. And culture bombs are just one of the most fun things in the game. That's what makes Coupe so fun. But the big thing, the thing that puts him in great tier for me, on top of all that stuff, yields from campuses, commercial hubs, holy sites, and theater squares are +1 in tiles and charming appeal. That's very easy to get. Charming, you can absolutely finesse. But they are +3 in breathtaking, which there are going to be times where you don't spawn with any breathtaking tiles, so that kind of stinks. But there are going to be times where you get the Teddy Roosevelt God spawns, and you can just put down like +7 campuses really quickly with him, and he just kind of gets absurd. He has that as like his wild card ability, but his other abilities, or it makes him great because they make him more consistent. So on top of that, he has the Digger unit, which gets +10 combat strength when fighting coastal tiles. Again, not that great as we talked about with Japan, but +5 combat strength when fighting in neutral or foreign territory. Literally just +5 for fighting people. That's so stupid. Like, why did they? If they made that +10, the Digger would be like the best unit in the game. But +5 is already nuts. You combo that with a great general or something, and now you're really cooking. Or even Crusade, since he gets those crazy holy sites, or he can get those crazy holy sites. So the Digger is very, very good. Pretty late game, but very good once you get it. And then he also gets the Outback Station, +1 food, +1 production. Food and production are the most important things in the game, so that's very nice. And you get an additional food if it's next to a pasture, and additional food and culture throughout the game, but it can only be built on desert hills, grassland tiles, or plain tiles. Grassland and plains are probably you're going to be putting on the most. Throw it next to your pastures, which you should be getting as him. And he just gets off to fantastic starts. That's the thing about John Curtin, is he can just get some crazy starts out of nowhere, and he doesn't feel like one of those civs that's supposed to be that good, but he's really strong, I think. So John Curtin, just overall a great civ. Not fully in God tier because his best parts of his ability aren't always up to you, but the games where it works, he is absolutely fantastic. Okay, real quick, I just wanted to let you guys see what the tier list looks like so far. I realize, obviously, I have the leader info blocking it, so this is what we're working with right now. I am ordering them, so the leftmost leaders are the highest ranking, and then the farther right you go, the lower they are. And honestly, now that I'm looking at it, I kind of want to move Eleanor up. I think she is a wild card civ. I think I was underrating her Court of Love a little bit, because I feel like Court of Love is maybe one of the most wild card abilities in the game. Like if you just have high population cities, and as we know, the AI loves to forward settle you, and not only forward settle you, but make really dumb cities. You can just snatch their cities. And that can kind of snowball out of nowhere if the AI messes up. So that's the main change I made. That's the only tier change I made. But yeah, everything's in order here. I just want to let you guys see it before I get into the next civ. So with that, next civ we got is Julius Caesar, and I have him all the way up in great tier. Honestly, I think he's really good. I'm gonna put him like towards the top of great tier. But he does have one main thing holding him back, and that is his, kind of variance that he's got, or his randomness to him. So Julius Caesar, he's got the same thing that Trajan does, but has not come up yet. So to go over everything, Julius Caesar's ability is he gets 200 gold whenever you conquer a city for the first time, or 100 when you earn gold from barbarian post. That 100 gold from a bar post is huge in the early game, and 200 conquering a city is really, really good. And then that gold goes up to 500 once you research steel. The researching steel thing gets a little weird because it makes you research text in a weird order, but it's not the end of the world. The thing that makes Rome amazing is the rest of the abilities. All cities you found just automatically have roads in them, which is amazing. And they also get a trading post that makes your internal trade routes a lot nicer. Just a really, really solid bonus there. Nothing game breaking, but just really solid. And then the legions are maybe the best unit in the entire game. They are a swordsman replacement. They get a builder charge that you can use to do whatever you want with. And the main strat that you do is you build one legion, and then you use your legion to chop woods to build another legion. And then you just keep doing that until you have a ridiculously quick army out of nowhere. And then you go and rush somebody and murder them. And all you need is a battering ram in most situations, and you're good to go. So legions are absolutely nuts. Very, very, very strong. And on top of that, he just gets a unique aqueduct that gives you amenities, which is great. And you already want to be building aqueducts anyway for your more awkwardly settled cities, and also to boost your commercial hubs and your industrial zones. So you put all that together, you just have a really, really well-rounded civ. But the thing that keeps Julius Caesar from the top tier, again, is the wild card factor of him, which is if you get like 1 or 2, or God forbid 3 or 4 barbarian outposts near you, not only are you getting a ridiculous amount of gold, but you're also leveling up your units, which you can then upgrade into legions and then just go absolutely crazy. Or if you fight someone really early on and take them out with legions, you are set up to just roll through the game. Like if you get a bar post, or if you take an early city, that gold early on is nuts, and you absolutely just completely snowball the game. But there's a lot of games where that's not going to happen. So you just have a really well-rounded civ that doesn't really get to do much outside of early war. That's the thing with Julius Caesar's Rome, is it has a higher ceiling, but a much lower floor. That's Julius Caesar. Very good, but you're going to have a game or two where it's not that fun. Next up, we have Christina, which I have in solid tier. Again, I feel bad. I don't value culture very highly, so this is probably just like an anti-culture rant here. But for culture victories, she's amazing. What she does is buildings with at least 3 great work slots, and wonders with at least 2 great work slots automatically themed when they have their slots filled. That's amazing. theming is so annoying, and I always forget to do it. And having them automatically themed is just mwah, just amazing. And then she also can make the Queen's Bibliothèque in the Government Plaza. Queen's Bibliothèque is really nice, just a lot more extra great work slots. The main thing that makes her insane, though, is the open air museum. The culture and tourism you get from them is crazy. It's a very, very, very good, unique improvement. She also gets diplomatic favor when earning great people and extra great people points from some of her buildings, which that's nice. Again, diplomatic favor is not the strongest thing in the world, but most of the time it's just going to be an extra gold. So we take those. Then she also has a unique unit, which is a pike and shot replacement, which is really interesting, which gets +3 combat strength per unused movement. Since it's only a 2 movement unit, that's not that great, but if you're just fortifying them there, it can be really nice. They're great blocker units. But pike and shots are a very awkward point in the game. They're right smack dab in the middle. A lot of times, if you're going to go a melee unit, you want musketmen as opposed to pike and shots. But there's going to be times where you use them, and they're going to be really nice, especially on defense. So not the worst unit in the game. And you put all that together, and you just have a civ that's got some interesting bonuses, and is a pretty decent culture civ, but there's still a lot better culture civs out there. So Christina's kind of left, again, that's something that I don't think I've fully addressed yet, is as the game's longevity has gone on and more civs have been introduced, there's a thing called power creep that happens, which if you're unfamiliar, just means the more and more things that are added to the game, like the more and more power you need to be at the top. And I feel like Christina is one of the civs that gets hurt by power creep the most. Like, her abilities are all nice, but they're not crazy good, and to be at the top of the game, you really need to be insanely good. So I have Christina solid, again, a very, very good culture civ, but can't really do much else. Next up, we have, I have them out of order, so I'm just going to do it in my order. We have China Kublai Khan, who I also have in solid tier, but I'd rather take the China Kublai Khan, so just at the top of solid tier. And what China does, we'll go into all of it. So we'll start with Kublai Khan's ability. You just get a free extra economic policy slot. That is so nice. Other than wildcard slots, economic slots are easily the best in the game. So just having one from the get-go and being able to do you know, God King and the extra production early is really, really nice, and that just continues to be good throughout the game. I don't get why people underrate this. Like, it's an incredible ability. However, that's kind of it when it comes to this version, and I'll get into it in a second here. Also, you see random Eureka's when assembling a trade post, another civilization city for the first time. I mean, again, if you're playing larger maps, that's better, but that's still just okay. It does combo well with the China's ability, which is your Eureka's and Civics get even higher boosts, which is nice. But that ability is just kind of okay. At most, that's shaving off 10 turns per game, which if that was all in the early game, that'd be great, but it's not. That ability is just fine. The Crouching Tiger is interesting. It's a range unit that only has 1 range, which on defense, hey, it's fantastic for defending cities. Just plop it in your city and it's going to be hard to take it. But other than that, the Crouching Tiger is pretty bad. And plus, for a defense unit, you really would love it to be an archer replacement, as opposed to a crossbow replacement. So it's a lot harder to get to than you'd want it to if you're getting rushed. And then they have the Great Wall, which is a good source of gold and culture and tourism, but it's not the best unique improvement in the game. I'd much rather have open air museums. So you are left with China's abilities, which are all pretty mediocre in my opinion, and you're mainly playing this just for the economic policy slot, which again, you could play other civs for a wildcard slot, or I don't know, just build Forbidden City or do whatever you want. So I think Kublai Khan's abilities altogether aren't that great, but again, economic policy slot is really nice. On the contrary though, next up we have Mongolia Kublai Khan, and I have him all the way up in great tier. I think he's really good. So in contrast, again, having the economic policy slot, again, as we talked about, is very, very nice. But Mongolia's abilities are just a lot better because you're going to be going war with Mongolia's abilities most of the time, and having that extra economic slot for those later governments that have less economic policy slots is super, super nice. It just gives you a lot more flexibility. And on top of that, starting a trade with someone automatically giving you the trading post boosts your Eureka's, which is a very, very nice synergy there. And then again, we already talked about Mongolia's abilities, but then you just have the Mongolia thing where boom, trade route. You're rushing with horses. You don't get the +3 that Genghis does, but you still get the Keshik, you still get the Ordu, and you can just rush people as him. And that, again, that economic policy slot will get you off to a much faster start, and it's really good. I don't think it's as strong as Genghis, but it's close. So it's not a bad alternative at all. Again, I think people really sleep on Kublai Khan. And he's just an overall great civ. Definitely give him a try if you haven't. I feel like, again, a lot of people underrate him. Oh boy. So next up, we have Kupe, who is also going to the top of situationally great. Kupe is insane. He has a lot of wild abilities. So let's just get right to it. The main thing with Kupe is that you start the game in the middle of the ocean. You have ocean tech, you have shipbuilding, you have sailing, all of that stuff. And you just get to explore the ocean, but you're just stuck in the ocean. So Kublai has insane civ variants, because some games you're going to immediately find land, boom, you set on the land, and while you were while you were sailing around, you still get science and culture, and then you settle, boom, you instantly get to 2 population, you have better housing, you start with your builder, you can immediately put down fishing boats to have like insane population, and you can really get rolling if you get a good start. But the problem is you can also get a really bad start, and when you're playing on deity, the AI gets 3 cities to start with, so there can be a lot of scenarios where you find land and you're smushed between 4 civs that all already have 3 cities, and you're screwed. So if you get good land with him, he's insane, because on top of just getting to be off on your own island and nobody bugs you, you also get a lot more production and food from unimproved tiles. So those rainforest tiles that you get, those woods tiles that you get, those deer tiles are really, really good as Kupe. And if you, oh my god, if you get lucky enough to have a bunch of jungle and like a big forest fire starts with Kupe, it's disgusting, like what his early game yields are. So you combo that with being able to just be off on your own and get to city sim as much as you want. Kupe can go crazy, and then on top of that, he has a unique amphitheater, I believe it is. Amphitheater replacement, the Mare, which gives you culture and faith for unimproved tiles, which you already want anyway. The Toa is fine. -5 combat strength for adjacent enemy units is nice, but it's not the best unit in the game. And then his unique improvement, honestly, I have not used ever. Maybe it's good, it's better in multiplayer, but I have never used the PA once, other than for era score. So Kupe is honestly one of the most fun civs to play, because you just get to explore really early on. You get a ton of tribal huts, because you get to explore everything way before everyone else does. Your fishing boats, culture bomb, so you can get these really fun cities where you just keep chaining culture bombs with all the fish tiles. They also get more food, so you just go God of the Sea with Kupe and just have these like insane water-based cities. But the problem is, again, there are going to be games where you just get screwed from the get-go. That's Kupe, the definition of a situationally great civ. Next up, we have Lady Six Guy, who I also have in wildcard. I'm going to put her pretty high in wildcard. As we know in civ, having a lot of science is really nice. And she gets a unique campus that can be incredibly strong. The only problem is it's very situational. As the Maya, you should be spawning near plantations, so getting the +2 science from plantations and being able to put farms around them should work, but there are games where you absolutely don't get that, and your observatories just kind of suck. So sometimes her campus is amazing, but it's not nearly as consistent as Korea's is. But the main thing with Lady Six Guy is her leader ability, which is non-capital cities within 6 tiles all get 10% to yields and receive a free builder, which does stack with Ancestral Hall, but anything outside of that gets -15. So basically, she is just worse. New Congo. I'm blanking on what the New Congo's leader's name is, so I apologize. But you basically want to spam out cities within your capital, within 6 tiles. There's a graphic that I can put on screen that has the exact like layout you want to do. And if you have the land to do it, and if that land is good, she can be insane, because those cities are just these mega cities that are incredible. But in a game like Civ 6, you want to go wide. You want to settle more cities than that. So getting limited to like 7 or 8 cities or whatever the number is can be pretty limiting, but she can get some really good starts. And again, you combo that with, if her campuses are right, she could be really good. Her ability also settling adjacent to freshwater coast doesn't provide extra housing, but instead her farms do a lot more. Her farms can give more housing, production, and golds and amenities as well. So her farms are just kind of nuts. And she can settle wherever she wants to, which is really nice, within, you know, the 6, 7, 8 city limit. So you don't have to worry about, you know, fresh water, which is really nice. And then she gets an archer replacement, which is nice in the early game, just straight up +5 combat strength when attacking a wounded unit, kind of like a mini Scythia ability. Nicer archers, which is great, especially against deity. But you put it all together and she's just super, super, super situational. Again, the definition of wild card. You're gonna have some games where you get to an incredible early start and her cities are nuts, and you just go crazy. Great science civ, but there's also games where your cities within your 6 to 8 city limit are bad, or you spawn on the coast, or you spawn in the tundra, or you spawn in the desert, and you have really bad cities. And then if you want to settle elsewhere, you have to take that 15% penalty, which isn't game breaking, but it's incredibly annoying. That's my problem. I'm someone who's kind of low on them. I've mainly had bad games with the Maya, so I'm just a little negatively biased, but when looking at their abilities as a whole, trying to be as objective as possible, they can be really good if you get the right setup for them. It's just the problem is, again, power creep. With the new Congo, this civ feels way worse than they used to. Next up, we have Lutaro of the Mapuche, who I also have in the wildcard tier, and his stuff is really all over the place. So +10 combat strength when fighting free cities or other civilizations that are in a golden age. That is a lot. Again, +10 is nuts. When you combo that with his unique unit, the Malin Rider, +5 of combat strength if within 4 hexes of friendly territory. That's really nice. You can do some fun stuff where you just like forward settle people and then send your raiders in, or it's very good for once you've taken an enemy city to snowball that with the raiders. But the problem is you have no control over the AI's golden ages or not. On deity, they should be getting golden ages, so you should be able to get that +10 bonus. But there's going to be games where they just don't. And you're like, cool, I guess I just don't have a leader bonus, which really stinks. On top of all this stuff, he gets a unique improvement that gives you plus production and gives you culture equal to 75% of the tile's appeal. Its improvement can be really good. Extra production is really, really nice. I'm pretty sure you can spam this out too. I could be wrong. I don't think it's very limited, so you can kind of just put it on whatever you want to. And then the Mapuche ability is you get 5% culture and production for cities with established governors. That's nice, but 5% is pretty low. You really want that 10% is what you want, but it can be helpful. And then 10% experience in combat towards units trained in the cities. The numbers get tripled when they're not founded by the Mapuche though. So when you're in cities that you've already taken, you feel how like those cities come online really quickly. So that's great. And having a bunch of loyalty bonuses as well is great. So the Mapuche are just a civ where there's gonna be games where you just roll through people with your +10 and +15 combat strength, and you just feel insane. And there's games where you feel completely useless. And it's really hard to gauge where they're at because of that. So that's why I have them in the wildcard tier, because they can really go either way. It truly just depends on the game, depends on their neighbors, depends on how well their neighbors are doing, what kind of land they have, etc., etc. Next up, we have Ludwig of Germany, and it's partially recency bias, but Ludwig, he's nuts, man. He's literally just better Germany. He's literally just better Germany. So let's go into, we already know what Germany does. They get the extra, they get the extra district per city. They get the Hansas, which are one of the best districts in the game. Again, production is king. But on top of that, Frederick's leader ability, you didn't really use that much. Again, the military policy slot is nice, don't get me wrong. But other than that, the +7 combat strength you don't really use. If you're not going a war game, military policy slots are pretty useless other than like logistics and the industrial zones card. Because of that, Frederick's leader bonus doesn't feel super impactful all the time. On the contrary, Ludwig's does. So wonders, even if you don't finish building the wonder just by placing it down, you get +2 culture for every adjacent district, and then all culture adjacencies provide tourism after discovering castles. The tourism isn't as good as you think it would be. It is nice, but it's not like you're gonna like win the game on turn 80 because of this and just get like super early wins. He's still a really good culture civ, but it's not like as broken as a lot of people thought it was on release. But this ability is nuts. You just get insane culture because you literally just research text for wonders, place them down, and then sometimes you finish them. But for the most part, you're just there to get the culture from it, and you don't care what happens after that. So he is nuts. So you combo that just a bunch of culture with already what Germany's good at, which is everything else, and you have a nutty civ. Ludwig is insane. I've seen people saying he's the best civ in the game. I'm not sure about that. I think that's a little too early to call, but I can see it where in a year or two, when we've had a lot more time to experiment with all these new civs, Ludwig is at the top of a lot of people's tier lists. Because this leader is nuts, man. This leader is nuts. Next up, we have Mansa Musa of the Mali, who is also going right to the top of situationally great. He is basically land Portugal, but he, instead of being dependent on coast, he's dependent on desert. So what the Mali does, international trade routes gain +1 gold for every flat desert tile in the origin city. You also get +1 trade route capacity every time you enter a golden age. That's roughly going to be, if you're having a good game, anywhere from 4 to 7 golden ages. So that's a lot of extra trade routes. And what you want to do with that is literally just have at least one city that's completely flatland desert, and then just funnel all your trade routes through it. It's very strong. On top of that, the ability that makes the Mali is city centers get +1 faith and +1 food for every adjacent desert and desert hill tile. So what that means is, unless Gitarja is in the game, and sometimes even if Gitarja is in the game, you get first Pantheon all the time as Mali. Given that you get a decent desert start, which you should be getting, you just get so much faith immediately, and it's very, very, very nice. So you usually get first Pantheon, and since the Mali is a faith civ, most of the time you're going to be taking desert folklore, but we'll continue this in a second here. On top of what I just said, mines do get -1 production, but they do give you +4 gold, and you can buy commercial hub district buildings with faith. The big kicker to the Mali is you have -30 production towards buildings and training units. That sucks in the early game, but it's just part of the Mali, because the whole thing with them is, well, let's continue here. They also get the Sugaba, which is arguably one of the best districts in the game. It's just a much cheaper to build commercial hub that allows you to buy things 20% cheaper with gold and faith in the city. And then they also have the cavalry. It gives you gold if you get kills with it. It's honestly not that great, but it is there. But the main thing with the Mali is that you have a very slow start because that production negativity, but you basically spam out trade routes. You get your religion immediately. Usually you go work ethic, desert folklore, but you can do whatever you want. And then you pump out all of your commercial hubs, all your Sugabas, and you just print money again. You get tons and tons and tons of gold with him, and it just continues to stack. It continues to build on itself as the game goes on. You just keep getting more and more trade routes, and it starts to get to a point where it's literally insane, and you can do whatever you want. He's a great culture civ because you could just buy everybody's great works from them, and when you have money in this game, you could literally do what you want, and that's kind of just how life works in general. So he is fantastic. The problem is he has a very slow start because of that production. It's -30 to buildings and units, but it's not -30 to everything. It doesn't count for districts or other things like that. So people get that confused and think it's -30 to everything. It's not as bad as people say, but it does suck, and you do feel that. So the Mali are disgusting if they can get set up, but if they can't get it set up, or if you're playing multiplayer, or if you have Alexander or some early war civ spawn next to you, you're kind of screwed, because there's not much you can do to defend yourself. If the AI leaves you alone, or if your fellow players leave you alone and you can get rolling, Mali is disgusting. It's just a matter of if you can get rolling or not. Next up, I have Matthias of Hungary, who I am relatively low on compared to other people, where I've seen other people rank him, but I'm going to put him in situationally great. I do think he can be really good, but again, his stuff, it takes some time. So let's get into it. His ability, Raven King, levied units gain an ability to move +2 movement and +5 combat strength. It also costs 75% less to upgrade them, not to levy, but to upgrade them. And if you levy troops from a city-state, you get 2 envoys, which is very nice. That's honestly a bonus I didn't need to throw in there, but it's very helpful. And then you get the Black Army when you get to castles. Castles isn't that far. So getting the Black Army, you can get them online pretty early, and they're a course replacement that just gets +3 combat strength for each adjacent levied unit. So essentially what you want to do with him is you want to place some districts down. You get 50% production towards districts and buildings if they're across from a river. That's really nice, being able to build pretty much everything that you want, or, you know, everything from districts and district buildings in half the time is crazy. And of course he's going to spawn on river, so you should be getting that bonus in most of your cities, is incredible. So that bonus is great. And you can combo that with Liang to make it even cheaper. But basically you want to rush the Black Army and levy a city, like save up your gold, levy a city-state, and then rush over the Black Army and your city-state units, upgrade them if you can, and just murder somebody. And then on top of that, the thing that's crazy about Hungary is that he's, I believe, the only civ where he has 2 unique war units that upgrade into each other. So you're like warring someone, you're murdering them, and then you upgrade all of your Black Armies into the Hussars, and then you just go crazy. And then you sweep someone with a like an insane power creep unit. So if you can get the right setup, you can get the right city-state going, if you have a good start, if you have the resources for a cavalry rush, my man is insane. He can be really good in some games, but there's also going to be games where by the time you get your coursers going, all of the enemy civs around you have like really high level walls that are a lot farther than you in science, and they're just able to defend themselves really easily. And he's not like Byzantine, where your horses can shred through enemy cities. They're still just normal horses. You do have that plus combat strength, which is nice, but that's not enough to break through a really strong defense from the AI or other players. So what can happen is there are going to be games with him where you're going super hard on the strat, you rush in there, and you just can't break through. So that's why I have him in situationally great, is because like a lot of the times when you get it working, it's great. And again, even if you're not going war, just that 50% production towards districts and buildings is really nice. And you're not going to be able to use his stuff all the time. So again, I've seen people rank him really highly and like put him in God tier. I don't see that personally. But hey, everyone's got different opinions. He also gets the thermal bath, which is +2 humanities and +2 production, which I believe is a whatever the first building in an entertainment complex is, but I could be wrong. It could be a workshop replacement. I'm totally blanking. I apologize. Amenities and production, nothing wrong with that. So again, I think he's situationally great. There's going to be games where he feels incredibly strong, and there's going to be games where he just feels kind of mid. In sharp contrast, we have Ethiopia. Ooh, another Civ with a fall from grace from Civ 5. But let's get into it. I have him in needs a buff tier, honestly. So what Ethiopia does, they get science and culture equal to 15% of the faith output that you're putting out in cities that are on hills. And then you get +4 combat strength when on hills. +4 combat strength on hills is really nice, especially for killing early barbs. Those fortified spearmen can get kind of annoying, so being able to shred through them is pretty cool when you combo that with the barb card. But just being able to be extra defensible is never a bad thing, and +4 is pretty decent. So we take those. And the science and culture equal to your faith, that definitely takes some time to get going, but he can get some pretty crazy faith because the rest of his abilities are faith-based. So international trade routes give you half a faith point per turn per resource. Again, that's completely RNG based, but sometimes it can be really nice. And you get +1 faith for each copy that the city owns, so a little bit better. And then you randomly just get like mini Jesuit education where you can buy archaeological museums and archaeologists with faith. That is really nice, honestly. It's not that strong because most of the time you can just buy them, you can just build them if you're having a normal game, but being able to do it with faith, similar to Gitarja, where it's just nice to do. And then he also gets Oromo Cavalry, where it's just like stronger and higher sight than the Courser, and can move on hills. Again, like we just talked about literally with Matthias, Coursers are a little bit tricky because A lot of the times, if you're playing against deity, by the time you get them, they already have a decent defense and wall set up, and it can be pretty rough, especially when you don't get to break through walls with horses. He also gets a unique builder improvement that just gives you a lot of faith next to mountains and next to hills. But the problem is those are already really high value tiles, so you want to be putting districts on those. So a lot of times his unique unit or his unique improvement you don't really use. So what you have with the Civ is a Civ that really loves faith, but doesn't get to do a lot of cool stuff with faith like the other Civs do. And he just kind of has a nice little bonus to science and culture, which there's another Civ that does that that we haven't talked about, or there's multiple Civs that do that that we haven't talked about yet that can do that a lot better. So you just have another Civ that's devastated by power creep, where there's just so many Civs that do what he's trying to do better, whether that's science and culture or faith. He's just kind of there, and it's just he feels incredibly underpowered every time you play him. He never feels that strong. It's just like, oh, okay, well I'm playing a Civ right now. So Ethiopia really needs a buff. I don't know what they could do to make him better, but man, he needs a buff. Next up, we have Montezuma. Who I have all the way in great tier as well. And I'm going to put him kind of towards the lower end of great tier, but still very good. And his thing is, he's also a Civ that can be very luck dependent. So let's get into what he does. Basically, luxury resources that he has give you +1 combat strength for each unique luxury resource that he has. So most of the time, that's only going to be a +4. But once you get later into the game and you settle on more and more continents, that can get to be pretty crazy, depending on how many you have. So not very good in the early game, but can be really good later. That scales really well. But the main thing about him is two things. One, you can spend builder charges to complete 20% of the original district's cost. That is so underrated, and it's so nice. Just being able to just pump out districts is incredible. Again, we've already talked ad nauseum about how good districts are, and he can just spam them out. And he also gets the Eagle Warrior, which is a warrior replacement that's just stronger. It takes longer to build, but if he kills a unit, he has a chance to turn that killed unit into a builder. So what you can do with him, Montezuma is especially good the slower game speed you're playing on, because the longer the Eagle Warriors are relevant, the better. Because what he does is you just kind of spam out Eagle Warriors, and then you just rush somebody, whether that's an early city state or an early opponent. You war them. Honestly, you don't even need to take over their cities if you don't want to. You just kill their units, and you can farm builders. It's crazy. It's not a 100% chance to turn the killed unit into a builder, but the proc chance is pretty high. It's like a lot of the time it turns them into builders. So you can amass this builder army and then send them back to your units and obviously make your land better, but also spam out districts, and then you can just absolutely go crazy on whatever yield you want to. So there are games where Montezuma is just gross, and he gets off to these crazy starts. But there's also games where you spam out your Eagle Warriors and there's nobody near you, or the people near you have equally, if not stronger, units. Or you don't have any luxuries to boost yourself up, or whatever happens, and you kind of get stuck in this weird early game limbo with him. So he has games where he's absolutely incredible. And again, I can't stress how good that is. The combo of getting free builders and being able to use them on your districts is nuts. Like it's so strong. And on top of that, he also just gets a free unique building. I believe that also is a, not stadium, but whatever the first building in a entertainment complex is, that gives you 2 amenities and 2 culture and 2 faith, and a great general point, which is really nice. So very helpful. They're not like, it's not like a game-breaking build or anything, but it's just a nice little bonus. So you put all that together, and he also is a Civ where you can argue him going higher, and I think you can argue him going lower because he has such high variance, but I think he sits firmly in great tier, where, again, sometimes he feels like one of the most powerful Civs in the game, and then sometimes he feels useless. So it's just, it's wild. Next up, we have the Congo, who I'm going to throw in wildcard tier as well. Let's get into what the Congo does. They can't build any holy sites, and they can't found their own religion, which is tough. Religion is very strong in this game, and there's going to be some starts you get with the Congo where you would love to put down holy sites, but you just can't, and that really, really sucks. But when people spread their religion to you, you basically get what Gandhi gets, which is you get all of their abilities, which is really nice. But since you can't build holy sites, some of the best abilities in the game are based on your holy sites. So it's really annoying that even if you are getting all the full benefits, you just straight up don't get any value from Feed the World or choral music or whatever it is. But hey, the other stuff is nice. And then on top of that, he gets +2 food, +2 production, +1 faith, and +4 gold from each relic, artifact, or like great works of art. That is really good. The problem is, early game, you're going to be relying on relics, and if you don't have candy in the game, or if you're not using game modes, you just can't get relics. It's totally not up to you. So that bonus is pretty bad until you start to get rolling, and you'd rather have an early game bonus than a later game bonus. So that one's pretty variant, but some games it can be incredible, and then some games it's just not good, or the AI was spamming out theater squares, so they're getting all the great works. And it can be a little rough if you don't have a good start. On top of that, they get a swordsman replacement that gets +10 combat strength when defending against range attacks. That's really nice. It's essentially a swordsman that starts with that free promotion, which is good. So he also has the Mbanzas, which is a little annoying because they can only be placed on woods or rainforest, but they get great food, great gold, and insane housing. So what happens is, like, he's kind of odd. Like, you want to rush your neighborhoods, and then you can make these incredibly high population cities and just go crazy with them. So it's weird. Like, the reason why I have it in wildcard is you look at all this stuff and it's pretty good. Like, when it's going well, it can be very nice, but I don't think, at least me personally, I don't think he deserves to be in Situation Great. When I look at all the civs in that tier, I don't think his peak is as good as those. He can have some really strong games. It's just you really need a decent start with him because all of his abilities, except for his swordsman, which even then is better on defense and offense, so that's also situational. All of his abilities are super situational. So if you get the right setup for him, he can have a crazy, crazy game. But it's just a lot of the times you either A, are going to get killed before you can do that, or B, you're going to be too far behind by the time he gets rolling. So certain games he's incredible, certain games he's not. So again, definition of a wild card. Next up, we have the new leader of Persia, Nader, who I also have in wild card, but I'm going to put him on the lower end of wild card. So what he does is he gets +5 combat strength when attacking full health units. That's really nice. It's not insane, but it is just a nice extra chunk of damage. And cities not founded by Nader give you +2 faith and +3 gold on domestic trade routes. Problem with that bonus is it's only +5 combat strength for one attack, and then that's it. And if they're fortified, you're really not going to feel it that much. The bonus to those internal trade routes is nice, but only on cities that you've taken. So, like, once you've taken cities, you're kind of getting to the point where you want to start doing international trade routes if you can. So that bonus isn't that great. I mean, it does combo with getting an extra trade route and then also getting +2 gold and +1 culture from internal trade routes. So if you can conquer cities with him, his internal trade routes are really good. However, that +5 bonus, even comboed with the Immortal, is not nearly enough to make him a great war civ. So you just have like almost a generic civ who gets all these bonuses to having taken cities and then barely gets any help taking cities. So he's in this weird limbo where, again, the Immortal is nice. His unique improvement is nice. He's not bad. And again, that extra combat strength is nice, especially when you combo it with flanking bonuses and things like that. But he just needs more. Like, honestly, he really needs a buff. But I think he can still be set up to have a better game than the people in the tiers below him, but it's not by much at all. Like, I think there is a real argument to put him lower on the tier list, but I'm putting him in just at the bottom of wildcard for now, because if you can get rolling with him, again, his internal trade outs are really nice. But I think with more time, we'll understand the civ better because he is still pretty new. Next up, we have the new Congo. We have Nzinga Mbande, who I am going to put all the way towards the top of great tier, like all the way at the top of great tier, just barely missing out on god tier, she is nuts. So we already just talked about the Congo's abilities, but she uses them so much better. So she just gets a flat 10% bonus to all yields if they're on the same continent as the capital. That is insane, because as we know, some continents in this game can be pretty big. So there's some games with her where all of your cities are just 10% better, which is incredible. But there's also some games where you spawn on a very small continent and you're only getting that bonus for like 3 of your cities. So she has a lot of variance, but when it does work, and I'd say 75% of the time, most of your cities are going to be on your same continent. That 75% of the time, or whatever the number actually equates to, is incredible. Like, that's so strong, just getting that free 10% all the time. On top of that, she can use the Congo's ability way better because she can make holy sites. So she can found her own religion, and then she can get the relic bonus once she founds her own religion. And then if you do have candy in the game, or you can get your theater squares rolling, and you can get all these artifacts and great works of sculptures and things like that, woof, she gets rolling. Like she can get really good. She also she's also one of the scariest AI to go against, because obviously on deity they already get all these bonuses to their yields. So if they're getting 10% on top of that as well, she is gross. So she's very, very, very good. And the only thing holding her back is sometimes continent spawn can screw her over. But for the most part, she's incredible and just barely misses out on God tier because of the variance. Next up, we have Pachacuti, which is one of my favorite Sims to play. And I'm going to throw him into situationally great. Kind of like right smack dab in the middle there. I love playing Pachacuti. And what he does is he has a bunch of stuff. But as you can see, the majority of it is all food and production bonuses, which, as we've covered, are the most important things in the early game. So domestic trade routes gain +1 food for every mountain tile in the origin city. And he has a huge mountain spawn bias. So a lot of the times what that means is your internal trade routes, especially if you combo this with Magnus, are insane. You get like +7, +8, +9 food trade routes. So you can get your early cities to grow really, really fast with him. And then on top of that, citizens can work mountain tiles, and they give you +2 production and +3 later. That's not that great. Most of the time it's not going to come into play, but once you have really, really, really big cities, it eventually will. And then it also bumps up to +1 food to mountain tiles for every adjacent terrace farm. So that's what's really important, because that combos with the terrace farm. And what terrace farms do are, they are probably the best unique improvement in the game, which is they give you +1 food and +1 housing, and then an extra +1 food for every adjacent mountain tile. So what that means is you spam out terrace farms next to your mountains that you should be having a lot of as Pachacuti, and you have like these super, super gross early game tiles that are like +6 food to production. And they also get production if you put an aqueduct next to them as well. And they get production for being next to fresh water. And they boost up your mountains once you start working your mountains. So you just get these absolutely gross tiles, and it's so strong. Like, he can get some insane early game cities. It's crazy. He also gets a skirmisher replacement. That's pretty bad. Pretty much all recon units are bad unless it's a scout replacement, which is nice. But a lot of times scout replacements are harder to build, so it can kind of be a double-edged sword there. But his skirmisher is fine. But he also can make a builder improvement on mountains to move through them, and have trade routes going through them have better yields. So again, the main thing about Pachacuti is he just gets insane early game food and production, which completely snowballs you through the game if you get the right start. If you don't get good mountains, if you don't get good terrace farm placements, he can have a pretty rough game. And on top of that, he also has the problem of a lot of the best terrace farm placements are going to be a lot of the best campus placements, holy site placements, your other districts that you want. So it can be a little counterintuitive, but his terrace farms are so good that a lot of times it's better just to put a terrace farm down than a district and sacrifice that +5 campus for a +3 or whatever you have to do. He can be amazing, but if he doesn't have mountains, he has nothing. So That will get you in situationally great. Next up, we have Pedro of Brazil, who I also have in the wild card, but I'm going to put him all the way at the top of wild card. I think you can argue that he should go higher. I think you can argue that he should go lower, and let's get into why. So his leader ability, after recruiting or patronizing a great person, 20% of his cost is refunded. That is very, very, very nice. Just getting a lot more great person points throughout the game is wonderful. It can't be understated, especially if you combo that with Divine Spark. It's great. It's a great bonus. But you don't feel it as much. It goes underappreciated because it's not as like flashy of an ability, but it's a very good one. But the thing that defines Brazil is rainforest tiles provide +1 adjacency bonus for campuses, commercial hubs, holy sites, and theater square districts, and then +1 appeal as opposed to the usual -1. That's very nice. It makes it that you don't just tank a culture game by playing Brazil. You can actually go culture them if you want to, and it makes your campuses and holy sites insane, which is a lot of the times what you want to do with him. So a lot of times what happens is you kind of just spam out campuses or you spam out holy sites. You pray that you can get Sacred Path as a Pantheon and make your holy sites just absolutely gross and then go work ethic holy sites and just go crazy with it and just snowball the game from there. Because most of the time you're going to have just an absurd amount of rainforest with you. The problem is rainforest tiles aren't that great unless they're on a hill, and even then you can't improve them until you get pretty far into the game, like pretty far into the mid game, to be able to put lumber mills on them. But once you do, you can get some crazy Chichen Itza cities with him. So that ability can be really good, but it's kind of similar to Teddy. It's kind of similar to Australia, where some games it's incredible, and some games you just don't have that good of adjacency over the entirety of your empire. Next up, he has a battleship replacement, which is just straight up stronger. If you're fighting navally with him, it's really strong. But a lot of times, again, as we've covered, naval combat just doesn't come up. But then he also has entertainment complex and water park replacements, which is kind of wild, that essentially give you a city project that give you a ton of great people points when you complete it. So he's just like the great people person Civ, but he doesn't like those city projects are the main way you're going to be bumping up your great people points. So he's not as insane. Like you'd think the great people Civ would just be drowning in them. But you don't get them as much as you'd want to, so you're mainly relying on your adjacency bonus ability to do it for you. That is why he's in wildcard, because there's some games where you just get off to crazy starts. You settle your first cities, you put down like 3+6 campuses and just go war somebody and instantly kill them. Or you get like the most insane faith and have a crazy monumentality game. So you can have some really, really good starts, but it's all dependent on his rainforest and what you can do with it. Next up, we have Pericles of Greece. And here we go. We got another god tier Civ. Pericles is nuts, man. So we already talked about what Greece does with Gorgo, which is boom, free wildcard slot, amazing, hoplites, incredibly strong, Acropolis is fantastic, all amazing abilities. But on top of that, he makes the Acropolis busted. Like the Acropolis is really good with Gorgo, but it's the best district in the game with Pericles, because that envoy you get when you build it is huge, because all you do is you spam out your Acropolises with Greece, you settle super, super wide to get a bunch of them, and then you use all those extra envoys to suzerain all of the best city-states in the game, and then you just get absurd culture, because you can very realistically end up with, very early on, getting an extra 25-30% culture in the game, which is nuts. And then you just completely snowball with culture, and it's crazy. It's so strong. And that's the thing, even if you don't even want to go a culture victory, having that much extra culture is so strong, because it gets you to your tier 2 government way faster and your tier 3 government way faster. And getting those extra governments is incredibly strong. You can go a stupid democracy game with him. He's so good. He's so good. He could do whatever you want. Just an incredibly powerful Civ. I think the potential of the other Civs above him are a little bit higher. And if you're getting a game where you're in a multiplayer game or the AI is just really spamming out envoys, his ability isn't as good. It's not as in your favor as you want it to be, or as in your control as you want it to be. But for the most part, he is crazy good. Speaking of crazy good, we have, spoiler alert, the Civ that I think is the best Civ in the game. which is Peter of Russia. So what he does, his main ability, or his leader ability, is he gets science and culture from trade routes to civs that are more advanced than him. That's all. The thing that's crazy about Russia, I was really hoping in this DLC we were going to get a different leader, because Peter's ability is not that good. Like, it almost never comes up other than early game deity, when they're just like ahead of you by a lot. But the thing that makes him so good is everything else. So the main thing is that you just automatically get a free extra 3 or 4 hexagons when you sell your cities. That's incredible. Just you have more land. That's so good. And also you get +1 faith and +1 production from tundra. And he has a tundra spawn bias. You also don't take any damage from blizzards. That's kind of nice, but it's not going to come up that much. And he has the same thing as Japan, where enemies take double damage from blizzards. Again, that's fine. But essentially what you do is, boom, you settle in the tundra, you stay in the tundra. You then immediately place down your Lavra, which is your unique holy site, the only one in the game, that you build in half the time. It also gives you a bunch of great artist points and great writer points and great musician points. And you spam out religion, you get a golden age once, and you have Dance of the Aurora, work ethic, you get a ridiculous amount of faith, a ridiculous amount of production, and you spam out whatever you want to do. You can very realistically have 16, 17 cities by turn 100 with him. It's so gross. You can have builders everywhere. You can have a lot of the times, because you're going to be spamming out your holy site, you are going to have more great artists, more great writers, more great musicians than you know what to do with. You're going to have so many all over the place. He is the best culture civ in the game. I've seen tons of videos on people winning culture victories with him by turn, 60, 50, 40. Like, it's so stupidly strong. I've said other civs are gross, other civs are overpowered. Russia truly needs a nerf. Like, they are so good. The argument for them not being the best civ in the game is that they need tundra, and they need a decent tundra spawn on top of that. But even if they get just a decent one, they're the best civ in the game, and there's no stopping them. It's so stupid. And then on top of that, they just get a free cavalry replacement that gets +5 combat strength when fighting in its home territory or adjacent to it. That's super nice. No one's going to be trying you. No one's going to try and fight you when you're playing Russia. But if they do, they're in for a world of hurt, and then also can move after it attacks, so they can't even get free hits on it. So it's so dumb. It hurts, man. It really hurts. I don't see how you can have many other civs over Russia. He's so good. Next up, we have Philip of Spain, who has had a great glow up. And I'm going to put him kind of smack dab in the middle of situationally great. So, if you don't know, Spain used to be the worst civ in the game, and then they got a huge buff, and now they are quite good. So what Philip does, Inquisitors can remove heresy 1 extra time. That's nice, but not that big of a deal. And they also eliminate 100% of the presence of other religions. That's really nice. Combat and religious units get a +5 combat strength when they're fighting players of other religions. That's going to be pretty much everybody when you're playing on deity. So a lot of times you just get a free +5. That's fantastic. On top of that, the main thing about him is the treasure fleet. He can form fleets and armadas a lot earlier, which is nice. But again, naval combat doesn't come up that much, but when it does, he's very good at it. And then the main thing is that trade routes, all of his trade routes get +3 gold, 2 faith, and 1 production. And if you settle on a separate continent, those yields are tripled. And if you settle on other continents, you get 25% production towards districts, and you get a free builder in your cities on other continents. So essentially, if he gets a continent split, if you find a continent really, really early, or God forbid you spawn on 2, Philip is so gross, because you basically want to go straight to a government plaza, you get down Ancestral Hall, and then you start spamming out settlers on the other continents, send trade routes to them, put down harbors or commercial hubs to get more trade routes, and you have disgusting yields. And we're not even done. He also gets a Conquistador, which is very strong because it's plus 10 combat strength if there's a religious unit. That's very easy to do. Just spawn a missionary and send it in with you. So he is a civ that can be gross with Crusade, because a Crusade with Conquistadors is plus 20 combat strength, and you add a Great General, that's 25. And then no, never mind. Crusade cancels out his leader ability. But even without Crusade, you just get the free +5. So it's like you get half Crusade. So his Conquistadors are incredibly strong. They are musketmen, so it takes a little bit to get going. But once you get them, they're stupid. And then he also has the mission, which is a unique improvement that gives you faith and production. But if it's on a different continent, it also gives you food, and if it's next to a campus on another continent, it also gives you science. And the science gets bigger as the game goes on. So you can get these you can get these yields as him where you have like a tile that's like +4 food, like 4 faith, 2 science, 2 production. Like it's so gross. So that improvement can be really good, but it is situational. And that's the thing with Philip is, again, he's another civ where in the right situation, he is incredible if you get that continent split, but you're not going to get that all the time. So if you don't get that, he just has some trade routes that are a little bit better without the continent split. He has an improvement that's okay. And then he has Conquistadors, which are still good. So you really need that continent split to make him insane. And that's one of the harder bonuses to get. Because something like the Congo's ability, being on your own continent is a lot easier than getting a continent split. Because sometimes you just don't get it until way later in the game. So it's very high variance civ. But when he works, woof, he works. Next up, we have Poundmaker, who I have in just solid. But I'm going to put him towards the top of solid. I think Poundmaker is very underrated. I see a lot of people put him as like one of, if not the worst civs in the game. I don't think he's that, but he is a little underpowered. So what the Kree gets is they get shared visibility with alliances. That's really nice. You don't realize that you don't get shared visibility until you have it, and then you're like, whoa. You can really scout the map very easily with him. You can like very easily get the circumnavigate of the world. He also has his outgoing trade routes give +1 food for every camp and pasture at the destination city. That's not as good. It's kind of the opposite of Pachacuti, where you don't, instead of being able to control it, it's completely up to whatever city you're sending it to, unless it's your own city. But a lot of times you want to send outward trade routes, and then trade routes sent to your city give you +1 gold, which is very nice. You feel that pretty early, actually. That gets online a lot quicker than you think it would. He also just immediately gets a +1 trade route once he gets pottery, which is incredibly early. And unclaimed tiles, if you send out a trade route and there's unclaimed tiles, he kind of absorbs them, which is very nice. But the thing that makes him really good is the Mecha Wop. It's his improvement. It's one of the best improvements in the game. You just get a free +1 production and +1 housing, and you could put it on any tile. You could put it on hills, you could put it on flatland, you could put it on whatever. That's really good. It also gets +1 gold if you're next to a larger resource, and for every 2 adjacent bonus resources, which is a lot harder to do, you get an extra food. Then you get extra production and food and everything as the game goes on. So that's a really nice improvement. You can just throw those on instead of mines, and it starts to get really nice as the game goes on. So he gets some pretty strong cities. Then he also gets a scout replacement that just starts with a free promotion. So his scouts are harder to build, which is annoying. It's an extra like turn or two, which you really don't want. But a really solid strat with him is just build 2 scouts. They immediately just fly around because they can go on hills, and you find a ton of trouble huts really quickly. And they also have higher combat strength, I believe. So a really cheeky strat you can do is throw in the card that gives your scouts more experience. And so they already start with a promotion, you can easily get to +2 or +3 promotions, and then you give them that +20 combat strength, and you can get like a nutty unit very early. So Poundmaker can be kind of crazy on the slower game speeds, where that comes into play, but that is more of a niche strat. But overall, he's just like a really solid civ. He's just kind of what Egypt wants to be, essentially, and he just gets really nice cities. But none of this is game breaking. None of this is incredibly strong. It's just nice, you know. So he's just a nice civ. It's nothing too crazy to write home about. Next up, we have, I believe it's pronounced Qin Shi Huang, I could be wrong, of China, who I have all the way in great tier, but kind of towards the bottom. So we've already talked about all of China's abilities. I personally do not think they're very good. I think Qin Shi or Qin Shi is all the way up here solely for his leader ability, be the first emperor. When you're building ancient or classical wonders, you can use builder charges to complete 15% of the original cost. Also, builders just get a free charge, and canals are you get a lot earlier. The canals thing doesn't really matter, but the builders are insane. That early just +1 builder charge is so good. Like, I can't stress that enough. One of the best early wonders in the game is pyramids because it gives you that, and you just get that for free just for existing, which is crazy. And then on top of that, you can use each builder to complete 60% of a wonder, which is so nuts. So you can combo that with the economic card, and you can just build any early game wonder you want. And as we know, most of the best wonders in the game are early game wonders. So you can have a world where you're playing on deity and you get Edamantonki, you get pyramids, whatever else you want, whatever else strong early game wonders you want to go for, you can absolutely do, and you just snipe the AI and you get these crazy starts, and then you just snowball through the game. Yes, the builder charge ability for wonders ends pretty quickly. Those are only early game, but again, the early game wonders are the ones you want anyway. So you basically just spam out builders with him and go absolutely crazy. And he's so good because of that. Yes, you are a little defenseless, but once you get to the Crouching Tiger, you'll be totally fine. It's just if they rush you early, you can be in a bit of a yikes situation. But if you're getting already a couple wonders, you should have some pretty insane cities to be able to defend yourself from there. He just gets off to these insane starts. It's so good. Like, he's so good, dude. It's just a matter if you can get those wonders, because again, we're talking about deity here, so they can spam them out very, very quickly. So if you have a bad capital and you can't get your builders out, it can backfire, but for the most part, you're going to be able to get whatever you want. And he's so good, dude. In stark contrast, we have Unifier China, who I have in wildcard tier, which he can honestly go up or he can go down. I have him kind of towards the bottom of wildcard because his ability, again, he also gets all of China stuff, which I personally don't think is very good. But his main ability is that melee units can have the convert barbs action, which normally religious units have. And it lets him convert all the barbs that are adjacent to it, but it kills the unit. So what that means is, in theory, and it's only melee units, it's nothing else. So in theory, you can take your warrior, run it into the middle of a bunch of barbs, somehow survive, and then convert all these barbs to your empire, and immediately kill barb compost and just get a bunch of units, and then go fight somebody. And you can do, again, if you find barbs close to you really early, you can do this as early as like turn 5. So he has games where, again, people love to do like the no city challenge with him, because you can just immediately use your warrior, run over, convert a bunch of units, and then go fight somebody, and they just aren't ready. Even on deity, they can't defend themselves, especially if you get horsemen from you attacking them, and it's crazy. But most of the time, that's not going to happen. Most of the time, you're going to send your warrior over, it's going to take a lot of damage, and you're going to have to use it to just get an archer and a warrior, and then you kill the barb camp, and that's it. And you're like, okay, well, now I'm just playing China. So there are games where he can, in theory, get off to some of the fastest starts in the game, but again, most of the time, that's not going to happen. So I have him in wild card just because if he does get that boost, it's gross, but you're probably not going to get that happening in your game. So he's kind of similar to Civ 5 Spain, where if you find early wonders, they're just the best Civ in the game. But most of the time, that's not going to happen. Next up, we have Ramses, who I have in wildcard tier as well. I'm going to put him kind of on the higher end because just kind of under Alexander here. Because his ability, he gets all of Egypt stuff, which is underwhelming, as we've talked about. But he gets culture equal to 50% of the construction cost when finishing buildings, and 30% when completing wonders. So basically, he has Ayutthaya, I think it is, suzerain for the whole game is what that means. And that 30% towards wonders is nice, but you don't get that big of a bonus to building wonders, so it's not like you can really spend them out. So essentially you just get a free 15% to all buildings, or to all culture when building buildings, which is nice. It's gonna shave off a lot of turns throughout the game, but it's very mundane. Like, you're not gonna feel it that much. It's just gonna be like, oh, every now and then, boom, I get like 2 turns shaved off here. I get a turn shaved off here. So you're gonna be going through the civic tree a lot faster, but it doesn't feel that impactful is the problem. It's not gonna like just completely snowball the game for you. It's not super flashy. It's just like a nice, consistent bonus to go with his other stuff. So I think he can be really solid, but doesn't have as high of the potential as a lot of the civs above him. Next up, we got Robert the Bruce of Scotland, who I am just gonna put kind of smack dab in the middle of solid tier. And I don't know how to explain it, because I look at his abilities and they're good. Like, he can declare wars of liberation. When he does, he gets 100% production and +2 movement. So a combo of Australia and Persia there for 10 turns. But the problem is war of liberations are really rare. So you can't really finesse them as much as you can other wars. So you just don't get that bonus the majority of the games. But so his main ability is that happy cities get +5% science and +5% production. And they also get better great people points. And ecstatic cities double that. But again, the whole power creep thing, you know, what the Congo gets is 10% to both of those and to everything else just for existing. So Scotland just feels really bad now. Like again, when you look at that on paper, it's decent, but man, does it feel very underpowered compared to the rest of the civs in the game. He also gets the Highlander, which is a scout replacement, or not a scout, but a ranger replacement, which is a recon unit, which we don't want. And then he gets the golf course, which is nice. Golf course is very nice. +2 amenities immediately is great. So once you get your golf courses online, you could really boost up the amenities of your cities and start to get to a static status a lot easier. But it takes a while to get rolling. Even when you do get rolling, he gets like 2/5 of the ability that the Congo does. So it just feels bad, man. It just doesn't feel good. If you can get the war of liberation, great, but it just doesn't happen that often. So essentially you just have a very, very underwhelming civ on your hands. But when you have the bonus going, extra science and extra production is great, especially when you combo that with like communism and things like that. Again, does he not feel good? Next up, we have original Saladin, who I am going to put towards the top of needs a buff. I am very biased. I really don't like playing as Arabia, and we're gonna get into why. What he does is the worship building that he chooses can be purchased for 1/10 the cost. That's amazing. You basically just get your worship building for free, which is fantastic. And if the AI, if you spread your religion to the AI and they buy it, Arabia just gets a straight 10% boost to science, faith, and culture in all of its cities. But the problem is, you know who's not gonna do that? Literally anybody. Like, you're playing against Arabia, so they're not gonna buy your worship building, even if you spread your religion to them. So you just never get that bonus. The only thing this does is it gives you your faith building a lot earlier, which is nice. So if you go pagodas or gurdwaras or whatever, you get it basically for free, which is really nice. It saves you a lot of faith. But this bonus is very mediocre. And then on top of that, you have to get the last great prophet. You cannot get it earlier. You have to get the last one. And if you spread religion, you get +1 science for your foreign city, which is really nice if you combo that with the faith ability that gives you science for spreading religion, which should be available. The AI usually doesn't really take it. But getting the last great prophet means you get the bottom of the barrel abilities. If you're lucky, work ethic will be there, because usually the AI doesn't take work ethic, but sometimes they do, especially if you're the last religion. And if you're playing in a multiplayer game, forget about it. You're just getting the garbage abilities. So your religion sucks. You don't get that many abilities to getting extra faith. The madrasa is nice. I believe it's a temple replacement, which does give you a little bit of extra faith. But again, you don't have any extra adjacency bonuses to your holy sites or anything, so you're relying on good land. So if you don't have good land with him, he's just like a really, really mid Religion civ. The one saving grace is the Menelik. It's a knight replacement. Knights are already really strong. That heals the end of every turn. That's incredible. Your only saving grace with Arabia is rush knights, pray your neighbor doesn't put walls up, and hopefully you can take a few cities before they put walls up. Is kind of it. I really don't see it with the civ. I don't get it. I see people rate them highly. Get in the comments if you want to correct me on this one, if I'm totally off and I'm just not seeing their greatness. But they feel really, really bad to play. I don't have them lower solely because of the Menelik, because the Menelik is very, very good. Other than that, I just think Arabia is really boring to play, very unfun and very unrewarding. So next up, we have the other version of Arabia, who I actually have in wildcard. And I think he kind of goes with Chandragupta in Norway in that like wildcard war civ, which again, as we've talked about, if you're going to be a war civ, you need to be really good at it. And he's good, but not that great. And what he does, you get double flanking and support bonus to all combat and religious units. That's really nice. The fact that it's both is fantastic. And this is something that you kind of need to have played Civ a decent amount or know what you're doing to get the most out of this bonus. In most situations, what this is going to equate to is like an extra +6 or +9 combat strength, which is really good. And he uses Last Prophet a lot better because the AI almost never takes Crusade. So you don't have to worry about faith in the early game. Maybe put down a Holy Site or two. Boom, you get your religion, you go Crusade, you spread your religion to get some extra science to boost you towards Mamluks, and then you spam out Mamluks. You have a lot better Mamluks because they have the support bonus, they heal themselves, and then you just, again, you pray that your neighbors don't put up walls, that you can take them out. So I just think he uses Arabia's bonuses a lot better than Arabia does. And again, the flanking support also goes for religious units. So when you're spreading your religion, you have a lot easier time because you can just murder people a lot quicker with your apostles. God forbid if you get the +20 or if you get the World Congress vote to get +10. So he's just a lot better. Again, he is pretty luck-based because, again, you're hoping that you get Crusade, you're hoping you get a decent religion with what's left, and you're hoping your neighbors aren't prepared for a night rush, but if it works, it's really good. And again, if the way Civ works, if you take over your neighbor, you just win the game. So they can be really good. It's just, again, it's up to chance. Next up, we have Sejong of Korea, who I have all the way up in God tier. Just kind of barely making it, but he's there. So what Sejong does is when you complete your first technology from a new era, you receive double your science per turn as culture. With Korea, we'll get into what they do real quick. Their mines give them +1 science for every adjacent CO1 district, and farms give them +1 food for every CO1 district. And then your CO1s are, as long as you put them on a hill, which they can only be put on hills, they are automatically +4 science, which is so good, especially early. It's just you can't put them next to other districts. So basically, you put your CO1s kind of in the corners of your city. You put them next to other hills where you can put mines down. And then you stack them up next to each other. You settle all your cities together and you put all your CO1s together and you get crazy science as Korea. It's like just insane amounts of science as Korea. And his leader ability isn't that strong in the early game, but once you get rolling and you get to the later eras and you get double your science per turn as culture, that really starts to add up and it shaves off a lot of turns in chunks as the game goes on. So he can get to the later governments a lot quicker than other civs do, on top of having a ton of science and just being a total science powerhouse. On top of that, he gets the Hawacha, which is just a really nice defense unit. Again, high range attack, but it just can't move and attack. So a lot better on defense than it would be on offense. And again, you just have this civ that's insane. That just gets insane science and then also gets culture boosts, which is very nice. So Korea, Sejong, very, very good. And going straight into it, next up we have Seon Duck. She basically does the same thing. She has all of the Korea bonuses that Sejong has, but instead of getting culture in like clumps, she gets 3% culture and science for each promotion that a governor has earned. So at most, that's gonna be an extra 15% science and culture for each governor in her city, which is very nice. But other than Pingala, a lot of the governors, you aren't really maxing them out. So you're not going to see that bonus nearly as much. And it's just going to mainly be for your capital, which is very good early game. So she's a great Pingala civ. Throw them in, boom, upgrade them a bunch, and your capital goes crazy as her. But I'd rather have Xizong's ability just because it scales a lot better into the late game, surprisingly. But again, she's really good because she does the same thing that Xizong does, which is the Korea stuff. You get insane science, and as we know, science is very, very, very strong in civ games. So you can just snowball and just completely dominate a science victory with her. I will say Korea as a whole doesn't feel as oppressive as the other civs in God tier. Taking a bit of a step down, next up we have Shaka, who I have in wild card, and I think he's kind of going to go towards the lower end of wild card. So Shaka has always been a great war civ. In this game, he's just an okay war civ, and we're going to get into it. So what he does is he can form corps and armies really early, and he gets an extra +5 combat strength to his corps and armies. So he gets just nutty units very early, but it's based on his ability, which is if you capture a city, whenever you capture a city with a unit, it will upgrade into a corps and army as long as you have the techs unlocked. So essentially what you want to do is on top of that, he also gets the Akanda, which is an encampment. He also gets the Akanda, which is encampment replacement that gives you a little bit more housing. It gives you some more gold and science, which is very nice. It can also build corps and armies immediately once you have the techs unlocked, which is really nice. And it builds them faster, which is great. So basically what you want to do is you want to rush to mercenaries, you want to rush to nationalism as fast as you can through the culture, you want to get as much early game culture as you can, and basically go in the tech tree, go straight to impies, which is a pikeman replacement that have increased flanking bonus, are easier to build, and much lower maintenance, and they level up faster. So you go to impies, you spam out your impies from your Akandas that you already built, and then boom, you take over a city and that turns into a core. And now your impy is an impy core with basically like +10 combat strength or +12 combat strength or whatever it ends up being. And he just snowballs super hard. But the thing is, impies are not crazy far into the tech tree, but they are a decent investment. So against the deity AI, what can happen is you go for the impy rush, and by the time you get there and you have your battering rams and you've sent them over, they don't have a movement bonus, so they can take a long time to get over to enemy cities, and they've already put up walls, or they've already have a ton of defense. You had to kill a bunch of units to get in there, and by the time you get in there, they have a bunch of like crossbows and things shooting at you, and you can't quite take the city. If you're not taking cities, you're not getting your cores, or if you're waiting to build cores, that takes a lot longer because you get impies way before you're going to get cores and armies. So what can happen is you can put all of your resources into a domination game and then not be able to dominate. So in the games where it works and you can get your impies out and you get an early core or two, he's crazy strong, but that's not always going to happen. And honestly, it's not going to happen a lot either, unless you're playing on the lower difficulties. So Shaka can honestly feel very underwhelming, but in the games where he does work, he really, really works. And he also has some of the best music in the game, so shout out to the Zulu. In stark contrast, next up we have Simon Bolivar, who I kind of wrestled where to put him, but honestly, I think he's smack dab in the middle of God tier. He used to be even more broken. He did receive fairly balanced nerf. And let's get into what he does that makes him so good. Every single era, he gets a free Great General, but specifically a Commandante General, which is his unique ones, which we'll get into. So he just gets free generals every era, which is fantastic. Encampments are mainly good for the Great General points, so the fact that you don't have to build encampments with him is fantastic if you don't want to. But the thing that makes Grand Columbia insane is that every single unit he makes gets +1 movement. And promoting your units doesn't end your turn. So you combo those two things together, and his military game, especially with horsemen, is disgusting. It's so gross because that +1 movement means you have +5 movement horsemen, and you just can absolutely dominate. But you don't even have to, because the +1 movement goes for everything. That goes for your scouts, that goes for your settlers, that goes for your builders, that goes for everything that you have. So you just do everything way faster than everyone else does. And if you want to do war, you also get free great generals every time. And you don't even have to use great generals if you want to, because their bonuses that they get are incredible. Some of the great general bonuses are things like it heals all of your units within its range, like fully heals all the units within your range, or you just get a flat +3 to cavalry, which is literally Genghis Khan's whole ability, or like stuff like his generals are crazy. So you combo that with the movement bonus, and he can be a absolute menace in war, let alone early game or not. And on top of that, in late game, he gets a cavalry replacement that gets +2 strength for every adjacent unit, which can get a little out of hand because you just get a free +6 or +8 or whatever you want to do. Lineros, so you just spam out these guitars, you have your great generals with you, you have your extra movement. It also fully heals when in range of a commandant general, which of course you're going to be getting for free. So he has insane early game, insane late game, and then on top of that he also gets the hacienda, which just gives him gold and production and housing and some food if you place it right. So he is just so gross. Some of it can be a little situational, because sometimes you want to do early war with him and then you just can't because the AI is too far ahead of you. But for the most part, his abilities just scale super, super, super well throughout the game. With whatever you want to do, +1 movement is just so good. And if you want to go war with him, he absolutely can. Or if you want to do early war, you can. Or if you want to wait until you get your Lineros and then just spam someone, you can as well. God, he's just so good. He's so fun to play as well. He's one of the civs I recommend to people when they're new to the game. Next up, we have Suleiman, who I have in wildcard tier, but I have him all the way at the top of wildcard tier. So Suleiman, what he does is he gets a unique governor, just a straight up new governor that he can get that is very good, that gives you a lot of military bonuses. So a lot of times you don't want to go the unique governor immediately, but you can do it pretty early on after you're either Magnus or Bengala. And the governor is very, very strong. He also gets 2 unique units, one being the Barbary Courser, which is very good. Costs no movement to coastal raid, so he kind of has like mini Norway in that ability. He doesn't get the triple yields, but he does just get to pillage for free. It is a privateer unit though, so that does suck because privateers aren't nearly as good, but it has to because it has to be able to coastal raid. So you can go crazy with coastal raid with him if you want to go naval war. Again, that's not as good because all the time you're not going to be able to, but in the games where it works, it's very nice. And then he has the Janissary, which is his main unit, which replaces the Musketman, starts with free promotion, is stronger, and is cheaper than the Musketman. He also gets the Grand Bazaar, which gives him an amenity for every luxury resource in the city, which is nice little bonus there. I believe the Grand Bazaar is a market replacement or a bank replacement. I could be totally wrong on that. But the main thing about Suleiman that is important is he gets 50% production towards siege units, and all of his siege units get +5 combat strength. And when you capture a city, it doesn't lose population. So you combo all 3 of those things together, and he can just absolutely come out of nowhere with a bajillion siege units and just destroy your cities, and then immediately start working those cities and have them be a lot better than they normally would be. The problem is all of these abilities we're talking about, the Barbary Corsair, the Janissary, his siege units, his governor, the Grand Bazaar, all of this is mid to late game bonuses. So in the early game, he just has nothing. So if you don't get a decent start with him, or you get a slow start, you can get way behind, way behind with the Ottomans, and then it's too much to come back from, even with his incredibly strong units. And if you're not on the coast, you don't even get to use his best unit anyway, or one of his best units anyway. In certain scenarios where you get to use all these bonuses, it's really, really strong, but a lot of the times you're not gonna be able to do it, and God forbid if they rush you early game, you have nothing to defend yourself, or nothing other than a base civ would to defend themselves. So there are gonna be games where he just sucks, but there's also games where he is just insanely strong. So again, that is the definition of a wild card to me. Next up, we have the other version of Suleiman, who I actually have in tier 3. On the lower end, but I do think he is a bit higher. So on top of all the other abilities, he loses the Janissary, but instead he gains 15% science and culture when in a golden age. and +4 combat strength when not in a golden age, and other civs are not in a golden age. So he's kind of weird. He's got a lot of, this ability is a lot of like combos what other civs have. But that +15 science and culture in a golden age, you feel that. That is a strong bonus. And again, if you're playing well, you can chain a lot of golden ages into each other and just have just a straight, you basically have Pingala and all of your cities for like half the game, if you're having a good game with them, which is very, very good. And if you're not, and someone else near you is not, you just get a free +4 combat strength on them, which completely negates the deity bonus, if I'm not mistaken. So that's really helpful. So you combo that with his siege units and his courser and all that, and he starts to get really good. And I think he just uses Ottoman stuff better. It's just more luck based, because at least with the other Ottomans, it's just you have to get going. You just have to get your start going and then you're fine. But this is Golden Age and non-Golden Age reliant, and the AI is non-Golden Age reliant. So that's the problem against civs, where it's not totally in their control or really annoying to play. But once you get some Golden Age with him, he's really good. It's just, if you don't get that start, if you have especially with him, if you have a slow start with him, it's even worse than if you have a slow start with the other Solomon, because then you don't get your Golden Ages, you can't spam them, and now you just have a +4 combat strength, and you can't get your siege units out, and it's a whole thing. So when he works, he's really, really good, but just a matter of getting him to work. Next up, we have the other Mali, the new Mali, Sundiata, who I have surprisingly not in situationally great, but just straight up in great tier, kind of smack dab in the middle here. So what he gets all the Mali stuff. He gets the city center bonus with food and faith, the mines giving you gold. He does have the slow start, the Sugabas, the cavalry, but instead of your desert cities giving you a bit more gold in your trade routes, it costs 20% less to recruit great people with gold. And your markets give you +2 great writing slots, and then great works of writing give you +4 gold and +2 production. What's wild is if you're fighting against the Mali, like if you're playing against them as an AI, and you take over their city with a market, that holds. So you get those great writing slots even if you're, as long as he founded the city, which is really wild, a fun little fact there. But that is really, really strong, because the 20% less gold for great people isn't just for great writers, it's for everybody. And with the Mali, you're going to be spamming out gold regardless. You're going to get a ton of gold. So that's so huge. You can build whatever wonder you want, essentially. You can get really good culture, you get really good science. Obviously, you can get your great work slots and get even more gold, even more production. And you can still do, you know, desert faith work ethic or desert folklore work ethic. You can still do all the strats you would do with the Mali. It's just he has even higher ceiling, because yes, you're losing out on more trade outs and maybe a little bit more gold in the long run, but you're replacing it with the power of great people, which is just, some of them can be game-changingly strong. He is really, really good. He just has the same problem that Mali does, which is he has a slow start, and you really need some decent desert to get going. So to hit his highest potential, you need good desert cities. So it is spawn reliant. But when it works, it's really good. He's really, really good. I think people sleep on how good he is. Next up, in complete contrast, we have Tamara, who I have in the needs a buff tier. Also kind of in the middle here. As time has gone on, I've seen people be like, oh, most people rank Tamara pretty lowly. I've seen a wave of people being like, oh, Tamara's not that bad. She's actually pretty good. And I just don't see it. I think she really needs a buff, because what she does is when she kills something, she gets 50% of the faith of the combat strength unit. So she gets what Gorgo does with faith. That's good if you don't have your Pantheon yet, but once you get your Pantheon, and if you don't get religious settlements out of that, it's not that good. And I'd much rather have the culture. Her main thing is that when she's in a Golden Age or Heroic Age, on top of getting whatever bonus she wants, she also gets what you would normally get in a normal age, which is like, oh, monumentality +1 era score for every district. So essentially, in theory, you can chain golden ages together and just constantly be in a golden age, which is very, very nice. If you know what you're doing with era score, you can absolutely finesse this and just get way more golden ages as you would in any other game, which is really nice. That's a very great bonus. She also gets 50% production towards walls, which is fine. You get double production of walls with limes, so her ability, part of her ability is literally just a policy card. But she also gets unique Ren walls that give her tourism and give her faith, which is nice. And she also gets a Man-at-Arms replacement that is a lot stronger on hills and also has no movement penalty on hills, similar to Ethiopia. And what you have is a Civ that's a decent faith Civ that can chain golden ages together, which is very nice, but she doesn't get enough bonuses to faith to really take advantage of having like 3 chain. Like, in theory, having 3 monumentalities with a lot of faith would be really good, but she doesn't get that many bonuses to getting extra faith to chain the monumentalities. So it's like, oh, okay, this should be good, but then when you play her, it doesn't feel that strong at all. So I think she needs a buff. I think her leader ability just needs to be reworked. Yes, the envoys you get from city, or getting the 2 envoys that have been converted to religion is very nice. But I'd just rather be playing Pericles. I'd rather be playing Gorgo. I'd rather be playing Russia. Like, there's just so many civs that are better at her than what she's trying to do. I think she just needs to rework her ability. Give her some ability that gives her faith. Oh, every defensive building gives you +2 faith or something, or +3 faith, and then it combos with her unique building. I think she'd be a lot better, but I don't know. I think she needs a buff, but hey, that's just me. Next up, we have Bull Moose Teddy, good old Teddy Roosevelt, who I am going to put all the way, even above Hammurabi, all the way at the top of situationally great. Teddy is crazy. So he gets America's abilities, which we talked about, which honestly aren't that good, but his leader ability is crazy. And what it does is breathtaking tiles adjacent to a natural wonder or a mountain give you +2 science, and breathtaking tiles adjacent to a wonder or woods give you +2 culture. And your national parks also have +1 appeal, which is nice. What that means is if you get a decent start, or God forbid, like a legendary start as Teddy, your capital is going to have tiles that are like 2 food, 2 production, 2 science, or 3 food, 1 production, 2 culture, or like just a lot of times more production than that, but just some gross cities with him. And what he does, as long as you have a decent start like that, he gets way more science and way more culture than everyone else does, and just completely snowballs the game, because you can do whatever you want when you have really good early game science and early game culture. So he, as long as he has good land, is nuts. The one downside to him is that you kind of have to play different, because it's all based on appeal, and you really don't want to lower appeal. So you want to beeline lumber mills, so you don't have to build mines in your land. You want to cut that jungle if it's anywhere near you, stuff like that. But like, especially with preserves and things like that, Teddy is just so gross. Like, we talked about like civs that can snowball the game. He can snowball the game probably the earliest out of everyone, besides like Unifier Qin Shi Huang getting a crazy start. He's the best snowball civ in the game. Like, he's so strong. So because of that, again, early game bonuses are what you want, and he has maybe the strongest early game bonus in the game. He's the definition of situationally great. If you get the good start with him, probably the best civ in the game. If you don't, he's just a very mediocre civ. Amazing culture civ, amazing science civ, but again, you really need that good start, and then he's fantastic. But if you don't get that good start, then he's just okay. In contrast, we have Rough Rider Teddy, who I just have in solid tier, but kind of barely in solid tier. He's just kind of there. Again, as we just said, America's abilities aren't very good, but his leader ability gives him +5 combat strength when on your home continent. As we talked about with the Congo, that's really easy. And a lot of times that's going to be the majority of the land that you're on for the early game. So just having a straight +5 combat strength all the time is really nice. And then envoys that you send to city-states, they have a trade route 2, count as 2. Again, that's kind of similar to Tamar's. It's a little bonus there, here and there, which is nice, but it's not going to be that big of a bonus. So it's basically just a +5 combat strength, which again is nice, but that's not enough to be insane. If it was plus 10, we'd have a real interesting conversation here, but it's not. It's just a plus 5. So again, that's going to make the difference on deity. It's going to help you defend yourself a lot easier, but it's not going to make it so that you just roll through the game. It's just going to be like, oh, okay, cool. I have a nice little bonus. And then the rest of America's stuff doesn't come on until later. He gains a Rough Rider, which is a cuirassier replacement that gives culture from kills on your continent, which again is very nice, but cuirassiers are very late into the game, or like, you're bordering on tanks at that point. So if you're waiting to do war at that point, it's usually not worth it. And again, the AI usually is pretty defensible at that point. So Rough Riders are not that great. And then you just have the plus 5 combat strength. So in theory, Rough Riders can be insane, especially if you do go religion with him and go crusade and you're fighting on your own continent. That's plus 25 combat strength. So they can be good if you just go all cuirassier build, but that's very late in the game. Even if you do go a full rush with Rough Riders and take over your neighbor, you're taking over your neighbor really late in the game. And by that point, there's probably multiple civs that are getting close to a science victory or are like fully set up to do a science victory or a religion victory or whatever. He's not that good. He's not terrible because that bonus can come in handy, but he's okay. Next up, we have Theodora of the Byzantines, who this is another one that I thought about for a while. And I honestly, and it might be recency bias, I honestly think she goes in God tier, and she's pretty high up there in God tier too. So as we talked about with the Byzantines already, they get the absolutely broken ability of Taxis, where they get plus 3 combat strength for spreading their religion for religious units and for combat units, and also get more great profit points. So they usually get a guaranteed religion decently early. They also get the Droman, which is very strong. She can use the Droman better because I think she has a higher chance of spawning on the coast than Byzantine does, but you can correct me on that. I could be totally off. Droman's still solid. Hippodrome still solid. It still gives you your heavy cav unit. Unfortunately, you don't get the unique knight replacement that Basil does, so you don't get to just roll the game or like he does. But you still get the plus 3 combat strength, and you still get the free horse units, and you still have the Droman. So she's still an incredibly good war civ. But on top of all that, instead of your cavalry units being really strong and being able to break through walls easier, she just gets culture straight up for whatever faith adjacency you have on your holy sites, which is so dumb because usually she gets really good faith adjacency on her holy sites because farms give you faith adjacency to your hippodromes and to your holy sites. So even if you don't get that good of a start, you don't get good mountains, if you're not on a wonder, if you don't get, Dance of the Aurora, Desert Folklore, whatever, she can still have insane holy sites because you can manufacture them. Farms are really easy to put around your districts for the most part. So she can be a very good river goddess civ or whatever you want to do. And she essentially just gets free faith adjacency and then turns it into culture. So on top of being a great war civ, she's also a super strong culture civ. So she's literally just like more versatile Basil, but Basil is way stronger at his one strat. So I have Basil higher just because in games where Basil's working, he's literally unstoppable. Whereas Theodora is just a lot more well-rounded, but is still incredibly strong. So she's super fun to play, very good. And again, these new civs are insane. Speaking of new civs that are insane, we have Tokugawa's Japan. Oh boy. So I already talked about what makes Japan good. All its abilities are fine. The main thing is being able to build districts faster and being able to spam out your districts together. Well, Tokugawa comes in and does that even better than normal Japan does. He's going all the way to God tier and almost at the top of the game. So what Tokugawa does, he still gets his district adjacency bonuses, samurai, electronics factory, but instead of being able to build certain districts in half the time, international trade routes get a hefty bonus, or a hefty penalty, negative 25%, but your domestic trade routes, your eternal trade routes, get +1 culture, +1 science, and +2 gold for each district that you have in the city that it's sending to. Also, cities within 6 tiles of Japan's capital are 100% loyal and get +1 tourism for every district. Tourism isn't that crazy, but it's a nice little bonus. 100% loyal is very nice on deity. And what this means is he is just the king of internal trade routes. You get Magnus going, you get his first promotion, You send a bunch of trade routes, you get commercial hubs, you boost up your trade routes, you start spamming out districts, you put them all together, you have these crazy, crazy, crazy district adjacencies, and then on top of that, you have these insane internal trade routes that are giving you all these crazy yields on top of your crazy districts. And then you go communism, which I believe gives you the card that makes your internal trade routes broken. And you just have a gross civ, like a civ that just gets to Sim City better than maybe anybody else in the game. So he's just Japan, he's just Hojo's Japan, but literally better. He is busted. If you like internal trade routes, or if you've never tried an internal trade route playthrough, this is the civ to do it with. And he's so strong. He's so strong, it's so dumb. Next up, we have Tamiris, who has kind of taken a fallen of grace as the tiers have gone on and as time has gone on with Civ 6. But I still think she's really strong. I think Tamiris is still a great Civ, kind of smack dab in the middle of great tier. So what Tamiris does, all of her units get +5 combat strength when attacking wounded units. We've talked about Civs that do that in the past, but all of her units get that. So that's really good. And it's not just like the first time you land a hit, but it's if they're wounded at all, then she just gets a +5, which is really, really good. And then also when they kill a unit, her units heal 30 hit points, which is crazy. On top of that, whenever she builds a light cav unit, any light cav unit, whether that's a horseman or courser, cavalry, helicopters, like it all scales, or her unique unit, a Psycho Horse Hatcher, she gets 2 of them. So, and she has a bias to spawning towards horses. So essentially what happens is you spawn in, you probably go for the Pantheon that gives you +1 production and faith for strategic resources. You work your horses, spam out a bunch of horsemen and horse archers, rush the person next to you, put some Kurgans down to get gold to cover your army cost and get faith. Boom, you kill your neighbor, you get monumentality. Now you have a ton of faith from your Kurgans and from everything else, and you completely snowball the game. The problem is sometimes, again, as we've talked about many times, the AI is very good at defending themselves. They get crazy good early bonuses, they put up walls, and your horse archers do nothing, your horsemen do nothing, and there's not much you can do, and it sucks. Which is, again, the worry with all early game war in this game. But she is one of the best early game war units because her units have such high movement, because she can build them so fast. She can just show up out of nowhere with like 8 horsemen, and sometimes you just roll the game, and it's fantastic. So I think she has to be in great tier because like that bonus is pretty consistent when it comes to war bonuses, and war bonuses usually aren't that consistent. But there are those rare times where it doesn't work, or she doesn't get a good start, or she doesn't get a lot of horses. Sometimes it can backfire, but for the most part, Scythia is very strong. I say she falls from grace just because a lot of people had Scythia as like one of, if not the best civ in the game at one point, especially early on. But she's still very solid. Next up, we have Trajan of Rome, who honestly, this might be a little controversial, but I'm putting him just barely in God tier. I think he just makes it to God tier because I think Trajan's Rome is the most consistent civ in the game. So we talked about it with Julius Caesar. The Bath and Legion are fantastic. Again, I truly believe the Legion is the best unit in the game. So you have some really strong, consistent early game war bonuses. The Bath is just a better aqueduct. You already want to put aqueducts down. You get a bunch of extra gold throughout the game for free. You get roads so you move faster. And then on top of all of that, all of your cities start with a free monument, which is so nice. Like, it cannot be understated how good that is. Just getting free culture from the get-go, and then the free production that you don't have to use, or the free gold that you don't have to use to put down monuments is so good. So you combo that with the stuff that already makes him a very strong civ, and you just have a civ that almost always can make it out of bad land, can almost always get rolling, and if he does get good land, can get off to incredible starts and just roll the game. So I think he's in God tier because of that, because he's always just gonna be good. No matter what you do, he's gonna be decent. And I think he deserves God tier for that. He doesn't have as high of potential as pretty much all the other civs in God tier, but he has the consistency to be one of the best civs in the game, and I truly believe that. Next up, we have normal Victoria. I'm gonna do first, who I have in wildcard tier. I'm gonna put her kind of towards the higher end of wildcard tier. Because as we talked about with England, just look at all this stuff. She just gets like an absurd amount of look at all this text. It's crazy. We've already gone over most of this, but the stuff that we haven't. When she founds a city on a continent other than her home continent, she gets a free melee unit and a trade capacity, which is really nice. And then her dockyard unit, if she has it, whenever she builds a navy dockyard, she gets a free naval unit of whatever the strongest thing she's researched is. So early game, of course, is going to be galleys, which is going to turn into caravels, going to turn into ironclads, and that she just gets kind of like a baby version of Venetian arsenal whenever she's putting on her Royal Navy dockyards, which is what you want to do. You want to be on the coast as Victoria anyway. And then you get the trade route capacities, which is a lot more gold and other yields. And you combo that with her naval dockyards, which are already really good, with her bonuses to production and coal mines and iron, and she can get some crazy naval games going. And she also gets the red coat, which is a line infantry replacement that gets +10 combat strength when fighting on another continent. So once you get further in the game, if you're settling cities really far away, again, there's not going to be a lot of land to contest at that point in the game, but if you can find land that the AI hasn't explored, or that's like not as good, but you can put cities down to get free red coats, you can get some pretty nutty combat bonuses. Line infantry is pretty far into the game though, but still, she can just be a wild domination civ, but it's everything has to go right with her is the problem. It's not the most consistent bonus, it's not the strongest bonus, but when it works, it's really nice. And she also just gets a ton of money from her harbors and the trade routes, and all of her things combined just make her a really solid civ if she has good coast, if she has good land, if she can expand, all of that stuff. But she needs a lot of things to go right to make her good, but when it goes right, it's wild. Next up, we have the Age of Steam Victoria, which, oh boy, is, again, it may be recency bias, but I think she is very good and is all the way in God tier and honestly above a lot of the civs we talked about. So what makes her so good is she gets all the stuff. She gets the Sea Dog, the Royal Navy Dockyard, the production towards industrial zones and industrial zone buildings, and more coal and all that stuff, right? But her leader ability is she gets an extra 10% production in cities that have an industrial zone, and then an extra 10% for every industrial zone building in that city. So what that means is she gets 2 Ruhr Valleys in all of her cities that have maxed out industrial zones. That's stupid. She gets ridiculous production. So strong. It's crazy. As we know, production is king in this game, and she is the queen of production. It's crazy. And not only that, honestly, the thing that might even make her better, or at least in the early game, is she gets not +1, but +2 production to all strategic units. And that's without them being improved. So what that means is if you get 1 horse, or God forbid 2 or 3, or 1 or 2 or 3 iron tiles in your early cities, she gets off to crazy strong starts because she gets a ton of production and can just do whatever she wants. She can immediately war somebody if she wants to. She doesn't have to, but just gets crazy production and then can spam out wonders, or can spam out settlers, or can start getting to her industrial zones, or can do whatever. And it's so strong. Like, her leader ability is nuts. Like, I would have thought they would have given her 5% production for cities and industrial zone buildings. That would have made a lot more sense, but 10% is crazy. On top of the +2 production, which you can combo with, again, the Pantheon that gives you +1 production for strategic units, and you get, oh my god, it's so gross. It's so gross, dude. She's insane. Oh my god, she's so good. If you haven't played her, please do. Next up, we have Wilfrid Laurier of Canada, who I'm gonna throw right smack dab again in the middle of situationally great. So he is another Tundra civ, but a very good one. He's seen a lot of buffs over time, and he has a lot of stuff, and all of them are really nice. So when he's in Tundra, all of his mines get +2 production, lumber mills get +2, production, and then camps and farms get +2 food, and you can put down farms and things like that on tundra tiles. So he just makes tundra actually not only like livable, but very, very good land. And then if you combo that with going religion and going Dance of the Aurora, or even going Goddess of the Hunt with him is crazy, because he's going to have a lot of deer and a lot of like fox tiles or whatever it's called, or furs, in most of his games. So he can get off to insane starts with his tundra land. Then on top of that, he can't be surprised warred on. So you get free protection from the AI unless they denounce you, which they probably will do, but hey, it's a little bit of heads up. And then for every 100 tourism, he also gets diplomatic favor, which is very nice, just free gold. And then double diplomatic favor from completing emergencies and score competitions. So he is an insane diplomatic victory civ, because you just get absurd amounts of diplomatic favor. And since you're probably not going to be going to war with him because you're going to be off on your own, selling all your cities in the tundra, you're going to be nice to everybody, you're going to have alliances, you're going to have a lot of diplomatic favor throughout the game. So you can just snowball diplomatic victories if you want. He gets great land if he's in the tundra, of course. He also gets the ice rink, which gives you, it's an improvement that gives you amenities and culture that can be built in tundra, which is very nice as well, and also gives you food and production later on in the game, and more culture. So just a very good improvement there. And then he also gets the Mountie, which isn't that great of a combat unit, but its main thing is that it can build 2 national parks. So if you're going a culture game with him, which you probably should because he gets a lot of culture, he can spam out the national parks and win that tourism. So he's a great culture civ, great diplomatic civ, just a great like city sim civ, as long as you're in tundra. If you're not in tundra, luckily he doesn't get any negative, so he can still do fine if he has good land, but you really want tundra to make the most of his ability. If he gets the right land for it, he's fantastic, but the thing that makes him even better is he doesn't need it. So honestly, now that I think about it, I think he goes higher. I think he goes towards the top of situationally great, because he's a lot more flexible than the other situational civs, but he still is a situational civ because you want to be in tundra. That brings us to the Netherlands. Wilhelmina, and I think she's great. I think people sleep on Wilhelmina quite a bit. I think she goes pretty high in the great tier. She's really, really solid. So what she does, her trade routes to your own cities give +2 loyalty. That's just fine. But trade routes to foreign cities give you +2 culture. That's very nice, especially early. But her main thing are these 2 abilities. One, she gets major JC bonuses, so +2 to campus, theater squares, industrial zones, if they're on a river, and then she gets a river spawn bias. So you get crazy good districts very early. And if you have a good start on top of a good river start, she's incredible. She also gets half off dams and flood barriers, which is amazing. And she gets a culture bomb for completing a harbor, which most of the time that's not really going to come up, but a nice little bonus. And then she also gets the polder, which can be placed on coast and lake tiles, and it just gives you food and production, and then more food and more production and gold as the game goes on. So as we know, food and production is great. And she also gets a frigate replacement that's just straight up +7 when attacking other cities, which is fantastic. So usually if you're spawning on the river, the river will lead you to coast, so you should have at least a couple coastal cities with her. And you can get some crazy starts, some crazy districts. You can go naval domination if you want. You can do completely city sim and put polders everywhere. You get early game culture. Like, she's just super, super well-rounded. She could do whatever you want. All you need is some rivers, which she's gonna have, and you're gonna have a great game with her. So I don't know why people don't talk about her more. I think she's really, really strong and just a great time. If you play Netherlands, you're probably gonna have a good time. Next up, we have Wu, who, again, speaking of civs that have taken a fall from grace from Civ 5, we're back. Another leader of China. We've talked about it. I don't think China's abilities are that good, but her leader ability makes it so that all offensive spy operations operate 1 higher. That is very, very nice. That means essentially it is a lot easier to get your spies going. Whenever you do complete an offensive mission, you get 50% of culture and science to that targeted city that turn. That's not a ton of science and culture, but it is a nice little chunk. And she also gets a free spy when she gets the defensive tactics civic. That's really early. So basically, she's just China, but you get an early spy that's better than your normal spies. I think spies are underrated in Civ 6, but aren't like all powerful. They are good. But this is an ability that's gonna like snowball you through the game. It's gonna help you catch up to the DDAI better, but it's not, again, it's not like that game changing. So I think she goes into the wild card tier, kind of just barely making it in the wild card tier with Eleanor. Actually, man, yeah, I think she goes the top of solid. I'm bumping her down. I know I just said all of that, but when I look at Wu, I don't think she's as good as any of the civs in the wild card tier. I really don't. I think she's good. I think she's solid, but not. I just don't think she's that powerful, honestly. But I could be wrong. Time could change my opinion. Who knows? Finally, at the end, we have Yongle, again, another China civ, who surprisingly, as much as I've been talking smack about China, Yongle is gonna go into God tier, and he's gonna go decently high into God tier. So what makes Yongle so good? Again, he gets all the China stuff, which again I don't think is very good, but he gets a bunch of unique city projects that basically are indefinite. But they convert half of the production used on them into food, faith, or gold, depending on which one you want. And then on top of that, if you have cities that are above 10 population or more, they get +2 gold, +1 science, and +1 culture for each population in that city. And then it scales with more and more population. So essentially what you do with Yongle is you settle a bunch of cities. If you can get faith, go feed the world. Make your cities as tall as possible. Use the unique city project to get your cities just like, you could literally just put the project, and since it goes indefinitely, just like auto sim until it gets to 10 population. And then you get crazy science and culture because you have all of these super tall cities and it just keeps going. You could literally just leave them growing and growing and growing if you want to. He's absolutely absurd. It takes a little bit to get going. But once he's going, he's crazy good. He can do any victory type you want. Just that leader ability is nuts. And it just gets better throughout the game. He's a great Pingala civ. Oh, sorry, my cat messed something up here. But he's just super, super good all around. So there you have it. There is the finished tier list. Let me move my camera here just in case I'm blocking anybody here. But here we go. Bam. That is the final tier list. Take a gander, take a look. This is organized. So in my opinion, Russia, the Khmer, Byzantine, Japan, and Germany are the best civs in the game with those leaders. And it continues to go down from there, from left to right, top to bottom. So that's the tier list. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a long one. So if you stuck it out this far, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like button, and please check me out on Twitch. That's my thing I love to do. I love streaming more than anything. So if you want to support me, checking me out on Twitch would be the main thing. I want to start streaming Civ over there, but I've been really into the YouTube thing, so I haven't been streaming as much as I normally do. So if the video does well, I'm going to try and stream more, and I would love to hang out with you. So again, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought. If you have any criticisms, concerns, questions, let me know. I'll be in the comments. Again, I'd love to know what you think. And this is tier list 1.0. If there's a lot of feedback, and if over time general opinions change, I would totally be down to do this again and re-rank everything and until we get like a solidified tier list. So I'm open to change. I'm excited to see what happens. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Again, if you liked what you saw, support me if you want to, or don't. It's a free country. Do whatever you want. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!